I'll make that motion, Warren.
I'll
I-
second. Oops, sorry.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second. Scarborough.
Mr. do we have any changes or comments on the minutes? Mr. Secretary or Ms. Secretary, pull the board.
Oh, wait, I'm doing this?
He who has the clock rules.
Okay. Commissioner Snyder?
You have to push the button.
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Commissioner Fligian?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox? Yes. Commissioner Scarborough is a yes?
No, it's
Is it now?
That's what I was going to.
Yeah. And Commissioner Sloniker, President Sloniker? 6-0.
Okay, next will be courtesy of the floor.
I'm sure, if I'm gonna do it, sure.
Oh, let's see. How quickly forget. Whitehall Township has an obligation to affirmatively further fair housing and to review all land use applications in accordance with federal civil rights statutes. This includes taking meaningful actions that overcome patterns of segregation and foster inclusive communities free from barriers that restrict access to opportunities based on protected characteristics. The township, in its land use decisions, does not discriminate against persons based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, disability, or familial status, and reviews all land use applications in accordance with federal civil rights statutes. Public comments made on the basis of bias and stereotype concerning people within these protected classes will not be taken into consideration by the township and its deliberations. Now, courtesy of the floor.
Karen Pashevko?
And, yeah. Wow, that was quick. It's almost like she
Alrighty.
didn't even talk.
Hi, everybody. As always, thank you for your service to our community. I'm going to talk about immigration, and it's been in the newspaper that some neighboring municipalities have taken steps to not collaborate with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, unless required by law. I asked this board to consider a similar action. This issue is very important to me because for about 10 years I taught English as a second language to adults, either as a paid instructor or as a volunteer, and I worked in various institutions in the Allentown and Bethlehem areas. There was a reciprocal relationship between my students and I. I taught them English. They shared their personal stories and taught me a lot about how other people in other countries live and are challenged. Hailing from all over the world, my students included MBA and PhD students with excellent literacy skills, but they needed help with conversation. Some of my students were refugees from war-torn countries. Others had only a 6th grade education in their own languages and struggled to read and write. But all of these people, and I think it's important to understand, all of these people were law-abiding, hardworking, respectful, and wanted to be contributing members to our country. Immigration is definitely a very complex issue, but I believe it should be addressed in a rational and compassionate way. Statistics show that undocumented immigrants have substantially lower crime rates than native-born individuals. I do not want my municipal tax money spent to help ICE round up people based on the way they look or how they speak. And in my mind, that's what's going to happen. Whitehall is very diverse. I think the type of the rhetoric that we're hearing is going to be detrimental to some of the folks in our community. I appreciate that you're very busy. but I'd like you to think about this issue. This issue is being forced upon us, and I believe we must respond. So I encourage you to consider enacting an ordinance to not cooperate with ICE unless required by law. Any comments? Have you thought about it, or? No?
All I would say is that Lehigh County drafted a plan on how to deal with such situations for the specific reasons where they detain somebody outside the required time limit, and ICE did not do their job, and the county was sued. So it's not that we wouldn't support them as required by law, it's that we're not gonna do, so I wouldn't wanna see our municipality do something that puts our taxpayers at liability for a lawsuit unless we're protected. That's all I
Okay.
would say.
Because there's a threat that ICE is going to show up at churches and schools. Now, is that just rumor? I don't know. But Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton either enacted an ordinance or is talking about it. So I'm just sharing my feelings.
And I would just say Lehigh County's policy predates, it goes back several years
Okay.
because of a specific lawsuit, and they had their legal department review how they would detain somebody.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Joni Tedesco?
Go Eagles. Joni Tedesco, 424 4th Street. Looking back at the January 13th, 2025 meeting, I had questioned Mr. Snyder about if he had someone in mind for a financial director. He wanted to respond at the time, but I was cut off by Mr. Sloniker. As previously mentioned, there was a referendum on the ballot a few years ago and was voted no by the residents. Now you want an ordinance, Bill number 6-2025, to initiate a referendum which needs to be done by February 18th to get it on the ballot for May election. You just don't give up, Mr. Snyder. Mr. Snyder, do you despise Mrs. Corrin so much for whatever reason to push this issue, contrary to you saying at the last meeting, you're done, you won't bring it up again, you accepted how the other commissioners felt, and it went down the tube? If you forget, you can go back and look at that meeting. Now you authored an ordinance to be voted on this evening so you can get it on the ballot. You are so full of yourself, and it's quite apparent you want to reach for the stars as the next president of the commissioners and/or mayor when it becomes available. As far as I can remember, the board has been undermining that of a female in the treasurer's position. Something or someone is prohibiting a fixation to the problem. What is the underlying problem? Simple solution for the tax office is for the administration to work with the union and get things worked out that Mrs. Corrin has the ability to discipline, hire, and fire if deemed necessary. As you all say, it's her responsibility to run that office. As you all say, it is her responsibility. That would eliminate her hands being tied. This is nothing short of a witch hunt, and a referendum is not the answer, and a financial director is not the answer. But it is a personal vendetta against Mrs. Corrin. Get rid of the problem in that office. That would help a lot. There is already a financial officer in the township. As far as Mrs. Corrin's lawsuit goes, I say kudos to Corrin. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Tony Jezik.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you again. Anthony Jezik, 3273 Water Street. I don't know the protocol. I simply came to see what the status is with our situation down in Darktown.
That would be handled by the mayor's office process right now. He's the one that's in contact with Pennsylvania on the different things.
Gotcha.
I really, at this point, I have no idea. I've heard little snippets, but not the entire thing.
Mr. Jezik, first of all, I want to thank you. Mr. Jezik took a petition that I produced and took it to the neighbors.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Okay, got it. I want to thank Mr. Jezik for taking this petition that I produced and taking it to the citizens of Water Street and getting it signed. The outcome of the petition and what it reads is, we, the undersigned, are in agreement for the planned closing of Water Street, Whitehall Township, Lehigh County, and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We had 38 total addresses, 27 yeses, 8 were either, one was a garage, unoccupied units, no response, and not applicable. But it is over the 70% threshold, so it meets all the requirements, and it gives me the power to do so. I also met with Brian Height, two members of the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, and Mr. Height, and a representative of LTAP, which is a state, Commissioner Warren was present, which is a state organization who gives you guidelines on road closures, speed bumps, speed humps, platforms, tables, and such. And it was very informative. They gave us a lot of really good information, and the suggestion was made that we create a traffic calming or traffic study done within the township by committee. I know that you're very impatient, so I have the ability to close Water Street. I haven't made that final decision yet, but I reached out to Peter Terry from Benchmark Engineering. He's our traffic consultant, traffic engineer. Mr. Terry is doing all the research to find out exactly what I have to do in order to close Water Street. It's going to be deemed as temporary, but it's at my discretion to acknowledge what temporary is. So Mr. Terry is working on this. I spoke to him today. We had this meeting with LTAP on Friday. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a hold of Mr. Terry right away. He got back to me today, and he's currently working on the situation. So as soon as I know, I'm not going to make a commitment yet and say we're closing Water Street until this is official and all the Ts are crossed and the Is are dotted. What I will say is I cleared it with police and fire. I haven't spoken to Citronia yet, who services us with advanced life support units. We can get around that. We also made calls to the county. We changed the box calls so we would have additional fire support from North Catasauqua. So we made a lot of headway here. I just ask for your patience, and we'll continue to move forward, and I'll do my very best to have this problem resolved. But thank you, Mr. Jezik, for everything.
Thank you.
May I say something?
Yes.
So a couple of weeks ago, I approached Lehigh Valley Planning Commission about getting technical support assistance from PennDOT. I know they have a program, I didn't know exactly what it was, to help municipalities resolve technical problems like that. And that was the LTAP, which is Local Technical Assistance Program. That's one funding source where a municipality petitions Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, they petition the state, they send a consultant out, and my goal was to have a fresh set of eyes look at this problem. We've had same people looking at the problem over and over. They drew some conclusions. I'm a pragmatic person. I want somebody else to look at it and see if they come up with the same results. If it does, it reinforces our decision going forward. If not, there are other alternatives. They did say traffic calming is a possibility down there. Speed humps would work, could work. They could be designed, recognizing their driveways, there's garage entrances. As Mayor Marks said, they suggested we adopt a traffic calming plan. South Whitehall has one because they were dealing with the same kind of issues, traffic problems, and also a safety plan. It's not just for Water Street, it would be for how we would apply a safe traffic calming in any neighborhood in the Whitehall Township. So, but then they did say in the interim, we could test speed humps using temporary speed humps that you could buy and install. The question came up about liability. The way to reduce liability for municipality is to follow the code and proper signage and markings. And that's with anything, whether you're putting up grounded posts that make people slow down, or even whether you're closing a road. If that road is closed and it's not signed properly and somebody hits the barrier, then we are liable. So there are several, I would like to see an incremental approach personally as a commissioner, but that's not to say we can't take other measures in the interim. They did say if you do close a road, we now have, 2,700 vehicles finding other routes, or 2,600 vehicles finding other routes, which could create problems at other intersections. So if we would close the road, their advice was to look at how that impacts other intersections. So I just wanted to,
But what we do have going for us is, it was closed for approximately 2 years when the bridge was being built. So,
I think it was 3.
3, okay.
Yeah.
Well, because of that 3-year, I mean, people were inconvenienced and they got over it.
It was closed when they did the cul-de-sacs, too, when they took them out
Okay,
for a year.
so,
You have to talk up with the mic.
so anyway, to make a long story short, people will be inconvenienced. I have the power to do this on a temporary basis until we come up with something better and another way to address this issue. But I assure you, I'm going to take every action that I possibly can to rectify the situation.
I do know, I thank you, but I do know Water Street is very unique because it has no sidewalks and it is only 17 feet wide. And we still have kids that the buses refuse to come down there. I don't know why they can't pick the kids up.
We discussed that with the school district at a
Okay.
community meeting a couple weeks ago. They were aware of the situation. We weren't until you brought it up at the
Yeah,
last meeting.
I've been talking to them for years.
And we asked them to address that situation. They did some research, acknowledged that there were 6 children that live in the neighborhood, and also acknowledged that, yes, this is a problem. But I said, we need a safe alternate route for these children to get to a bus stop, or you need to get a bus down there, be it a minibus, whatever it may be. They said they're going to look into it. They assured us they would address the situation.
Great.
And, we have to move forward with this, so it's on them at this point. We said our thing, and hopefully they're gonna address this.
Yeah, because I look at that one boy, my neighbor, going home every day and he's terrified.
No, it's unacceptable
Yeah,
that
it's-
these children have to walk, in the snow, in the ice, wherever it is. It's not safe. They deserve every privilege that every other child in Whitehall Township has. Just
Yeah.
because they live on Water Street in Darktown doesn't mean they shouldn't
Yeah.
have accessibility to buses and such.
A lot of kids went through the whole school and they, first to 12th grade and they
I
never got
apologize.
it.
I was not aware of that
Yeah.
until, one of the citizens brought it up at the last meeting.
Yeah.
So, but hopefully the school district will address that situation. Well, they have to. They're obligated to now, so
Because we definitely can't have another life ended on Water Street.
No.
That cannot happen.
that would totally be unacceptable.
We'd
And
be
that,
in bad shape.
I'm gonna do everything to make sure that never happens again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Rick Theckler? Sorry if I messed that up. Is there a Rick? No Rick? Okay, Andreas? Andreas? No? Okay, Barb? Is Barb here? And then Ray. Oh, Ray Bike? Bayek?
Name's Ray Bayek. I'm with the Ironton Rail Trail. 3850 Bruner Court, Fellowship Court. I've been with the Ironton Rail Trail for 25 years, and I have another member here, Ray Deutsch. We have been doing historical walks and historical bus tours on the trail for the last 20 years. And we have educated a lot of people about the historical value of the Ironton Railroad, which is now the Ironton Rail Trail. On these tours that we do, people are really impressed with the history of this community, with the iron industries and the cement industries, which built these boroughs, Egypt, Cementon, and Hakkendakwa, which were all company towns. We have a mature trail. We'll be celebrating our 30th anniversary next year. And these buildings that we have that are still standing from the cement industries are deteriorating. We have taken upon ourselves to try to save some of these buildings for historical value. Right now, we're homing in on a smaller project, which is the so-called firehouse in the Parkway. We have made a proposal to finance the restoration of the roof on the firehouse. I've talked to the Rec Commission, and I'm waiting for an approval from them to apply for a grant so that we can restore the roof on the firehouse. This firehouse is used for many purposes. The firemen use it. It's a place for people to stay in if there's an inclement weather. And it's just a very beautiful building with the arched doorways and everything. So that's our proposal. So I'm waiting for the Rec Commission to get back to us, and perhaps we can follow through and get the roof fixed. We do have a couple of estimates already, so we're all ready to go.
I would add, this process started in August of 2024. And it started with the Ironton Rail Trail reaching out to the Whitehall Historical Preservation Society. They, on their own, took the initiative to pass a resolution to support the restoration of the firehouse. Karen Ginsey, the township historian, wrote the history, a good part of the history about it. And at that point, I think there was communication with the township, and that the Ironton Rail Trail folks were going out getting budgetary estimates to get an idea of the scale of the project. It became clear after the budget was passed that the township wasn't necessarily interested in putting general funds dollars up for the project, but we do have, there's already $3,000 committed in private funds, just by word of mouth, people knowing that this project is a possibility. Oh, I would like to contribute. There's $3,000 earmarked, like, in consent there. I know the rail trail folks have talked about committing some of their finances. They have over $50,000, $500 in their account right now. They want to be a stakeholder in this. What they were trying to ask is the permission from the township, to work with the township to pursue a mini trails grant, Greenway Trails Grant, which is open. I think it's due next month, is it?
Yeah.
Pretty much all the pieces are in place to submit for that grant. It's not a grant that the township pursues. The Ironton Rail Trail have pursued it, and they have been successful 2 or 3 times already. But it's not taking away from one of our initiatives. And so the cost is manageable. We're sitting on $214,000 of developer dollars, and this project is consistent with a number of things. It's consistent with the mission of the Ironton Rail Trail. It's consistent with the mission of the Whitehall Historical Preservation Society. It's consistent with the Lehigh Valley Regional Plan, regional plan for coordinated pattern of development, protect the vibrant environment, safety and health of livable communities. It's consistent with Lehigh Valley Planning Commission's livable landscapes for park, recreation, open space, agriculture, and historic lands plans for Lehigh County. It's consistent with Whitehall Township Comprehensive Plan, passed in 2005, meeting historic preservation objectives identified in that plan. It's also consistent with our own zoning that allows municipal use by right. And the project also qualifies for the goals of Whitehall Township Recreation Commission, both the IRT, WIPS, and it's consistent with the Rec Commission program. And that would have to go through, they would have to submit an application, but what they're asking too is to provide a framework where private finances, a public grant, and the project, would you say the project is we must have Rec Commission dollars to proceed with the project? Or do you think it's still accomplished?
I think we can handle the whole thing.
All right.
we haven't really advertised for donations.
And it's not
but
necessarily predicated on a grant either.
We would like to get a grant.
Right, grant. In the grant,
Yes.
you're trying to get.
matching grant.
Your goal is to try to get a third from the grant, a third from the Ironton Rail Trail, or 100% of that matched from the Ironton Trail.
Yeah.
Or some dollar amount from the Rec Commission. So,
Well,
and they pulled me into it in November.
well, the numbers that I proposed were a local contractor which has done work on the trail before gave us a bid of around $14,000. And I would put in a match for $7,000. And the rest, the other match of $7,000, I was proposing that the Rec Commission give $3,500 and we'd give $3,500. But if they do not want to give any, I'm sure I can fill up that $3,500 with donations, no problem.
Thank you, Mr. Bach.
So I'm just asking, who does the grant application? The Rec Commission or the Ironton Rail Trail like we have before?
Did you process the grant by yourself, or did you use the person in the township that we contract with to process?
Nothing
We did it ourselves through the Lehigh Valley Greenways with the Delaware and Lehigh National Historic Corridor.
The former grants, they've been successful with 3 grants already in the past.
4. This
Four?
would be our 5th mini grant. And we've been always successful because they know how successful the trail is.
You like the old expression, "We'll get back to you, Ray." I mean, because right now it doesn't appear that we know exactly who we're going to contact and
Yes.
everything. So, thank you.
And I would just emphasize the importance of the number of stakeholders that are involved with this, that put their passion in the Ironton Rail Trail for the last 2 decades. If we had to pay them for their work, they'd have a lot more money to do more stuff. So thank you for the volunteerism, and I think we need to support our volunteers. Thank
Okay?
you.
And the grant application closeout is around the middle of March. So we have 1 month to decide. Okay.
All right. Anybody that did not sign in for courtesy of the floor at this time, do they want to,
Can I add one thing about the rail trail?
again, your name and,
Anthony Jezik, 3273 Water Street. I think due to the soil along the rail trail, the trees are deteriorating prematurely, and we have trees falling down all the time. I cut them in Darktown and clear it, but there's a lot of dead trees that are gonna be falling down. Every windstorm, they fall down. It's really bad. There's a lot of them just hanging from other branches. They call them widowmakers. I look at Darktown and there's a lot of them down there. Somebody should take an eyeball and check it out, because it's another accident
In
waiting to
this
happen.
year's budget, we have 30 grand for, I think, tree removal.
Really?
And
I should put in for some of that, because I took a few down.
well, the recreation department is going to look at some of those
Gotcha.
problem trees. It's not just for the rail trail, it's
Yeah,
for other parks.
there's dozens of them just in Darktown.
And Mr. Jezik, we just did a tranche. Our rec department, our rec director went through, and it's like whack-a-mole. You know, every storm creates new trees falling. And what we do is we try to pick the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
And remove those first. But it's one of those things, you know, it's a
Yeah.
continuous process, it's not easy, and we only have so much revenue to address the situation. Now, fortunately, since the board has appropriated another body for rec maintenance, we'll have an operator who can now operate equipment that the rec maintenance department couldn't operate before. And we just appropriated money for a wood chipper also. So not only will they have an operator and the ability to do more of the heavy lifting, we don't have to go to Public Works and put an operator out from Public Works. They'll have one on their crew, and they'll have the ability to do more tree removal in-house. And with the wood chipper, it'll go a long way. We won't have to do as much carry-out, you know, and take it over the camera track. So hopefully, we'll be able to address more volume and more issues in the future, instead of paying, you know, a third-party contractor and
course.
such. but it's very complicated. I mean, the rail trail, we have 7 miles, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of trees, and there's a lot of undergrowth that hasn't been addressed, you know, probably since the railroad was put in.
Yeah.
And now, you know, time's coming, so we're gonna deal with these issues the best we can.
I probably shouldn't ask, but should I stop cutting the trees down when they fall? Am I a liability at that
Well,
point?
yeah, you're taking a personal liability.
Is it
God
okay,
forbid
though,
you
that I
hurt
do that?
yourself. Well, no, I don't suggest you do so. I mean, I'm grateful that you do, but if you hurt yourself or you hurt someone on
yeah.
the trail, that's gonna open you up to personal liability. And, you know, you're gonna try to hold the township responsible for your actions.
Nah, I'm not like that. I'm just
Okay.
holding you for the street, not the trail.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go on to public hearing and voting on ordinances. Bill number 40-2024, second hearing, an ordinance amending Chapter 27 zoning, Article 13, signs of the Township zoning ordinance. Do I hear a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Pelagian.
Any comments, questions by the board?
Just to clarify, this was the sign modifications that we've talked about for a few months that you presented and you worked on? Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yes, the purpose of this is to make it easier on the businesses as far as making sure that they're not in violation and it just works better. This was worked out between the zoning officer and Lee Rackus and I came up with all the differences. It worked out well. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board?
And I would presume if there's any outstanding violations or hearings or any kind of legal action, that if this is proved, it puts that to rest, right? Or we're fixing it for people going forward, not fixing it from people that were affected in the past? Do we have an answer? I don't know if there are. I don't know if there are.
I'm not sure if there are any, Mr. Warren, but if people violated the ordinance when it was in effect, those enforcements remain. This ordinance can't be retroactive so, but
There are a number of people that we've, yeah. Okay.
I don't know if there are open cases or not, but you're not adopting an ordinance that makes something that was a violation before today not a violation I mean, it's whatever ordinance is in effect when it happens.
It wasn't my intent to make, it was not my intent to make it retroactive. There are some issues that they're currently working on, but that's previous, so.
Any further talks? Any input from the community? Please poll the board.
Commissioner Snyder?
I need green. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Commissioner Pelagian?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Yes.
Yes for Scarfaro. President Sloniker? Motion passes 6-0.
Bill number 3-2025, an ordinance establishing the salary of the township treasurer for the years 2026, 2027, 2028, and 2029. Do I have a motion?
I do.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
I'll second Scarfaro.
Okay, well, and again, this is just to talk about, doesn't mean yes or no at this point. Okay. All right, now we can have some discussion if you so want to.
Can I get clarity on something?
Ye- Absolutely.
Oh.
Sorry. Jack Myers. There's been a bunch of emails back and forth. There is no set amount at this point in this ordinance what it's going to be. That's right, but I thought I saw something where there was increases in different things, percentages, in some of my emails. I was coming through them after I got back from, no. So it's entirely up to us tonight. We start with a blank page, in theory. Thank you.
Historically, though, it's been whether we increase it from what is present or we remain the same, and I've never had it before, but we could reduce it. But again, historically, it's usually been an increase. And it doesn't have to be for all 4 years either. I went through that myself. So in other words, just because you give an increase on year 1 does not mean you have to give an increase on year 3, that type of thing.
And I'll just add that, at last meeting, and to the commissioners that weren't present, I sent out a table going back to 2006, I think, of what the increases were for the salary of treasurer. And out of those 20 years, there were 10 years where there was zero increase. So it's just, there was some discussion on some of the roles being reduced over the years, and I was just trying to illustrate that on some of those years, there were no increases. There was one term where I think they might have went 4 years without an increase, or 3 years consecutive in years.
So there was also emails that came from Tina that I read, and if I have this wrong, correct me. The treasurer gets compensated from our township in the amount of $40,450. The school district pays her approximately $24,131. There are tax certs, which currently the rate is $20 per tax cert, and there's approximately 400 to 350 of those last year, is what I'm guessing. So it could be about $7,000. So under the current system, there was 24, 7, 31. The total package is $71,000. Now I'm going to go back to what I think Tina said. The treasurer's office for the retirement only counts for the $40,000, not the $23,000, number one. There is also a kicker for medical benefits that you are entitled, not you, this position is entitled to, but maybe doesn't take it. And when they don't take it, then they get a rebate from us because they're entitled to get it. I'm going to just use a number, 9,000. So this office at this particular point makes approximately $71,000 and works their way through that. This office also, according to the charter, has no vacation days, no sick days, and no holidays. Is that a correct statement? Okay. The clerks in the department make approximately, according to our budget, $63,000 and change. Our deputy makes approximately $70,450 and change. I understand that the school district decides what they will or not pay, and it gets paid directly to the treasurer's office. But I look at it as a total compensation because money comes from them or vice versa. So at this point in time, we are looking at, there are no requirements to whether you work a 40-hour week or a 24-hour week. There's no requirements. The job dictates how many hours you work and you don't work. So what we have to decide, that's the compensation side of it. Then I got another thing, I think we all got this. I got the thing from Jeff that shows that there was no increases accordingly. Then we received this thing called the breakdown in costs and duties that came from Jack Myers. In 2006, the salary was $32,000. In 2025, it's $40,000, which is approximately a $7,000 increase. But as of now, the real estate taxes are still being collected by the treasurer's office. Delinquents are collected by Portnoy. Per capita is collected by the treasurer's office. Business privilege tax is not being collected going forward by the treasurer's office. Trash and garbage is by the treasurer's. Delinquent trash is no longer collected by the treasurer's office. Earned income tax is not, nor occupational municipal services is not collected. From the time we started, I'm going to call it a transaction for the sake of discussion. There's 11,000 transactions that are not tracked anymore because that has been outsourced. And there's 19,000 of EIT returns that have been outsourced as well. The flip side of that for me, this is me speaking, that we now have more controls in the office than we had previously. We now have more to deal with the computer than we previously had. So I don't think it's their need for a reduction in the treasurer's position because there's other duties that are being required that takes time. So I'm not looking for a reduction on responsibility. Now, if you look at treasurer/tax collector, this position is a treasurer. It's not like other municipalities where they're strictly tax collectors. So I did some searching to see what other tax collectors make in our area, and that's like all over the place. There's 10,000, 9,000, 30,000. Some of them get $30 for their tax certs, but they're doing 800 tax certs a year, so it's a mishmash. So this position really is not a tax collector. It's really I hate to say it, but it's a financial director of this department that runs and collects our funds. And so the job description, in my opinion, has changed over the last 4 years. The people who were in this before, we probably didn't have as much oversight as we do now, not as many audits to be responsible as we do now, and more accountability now than we did before. So I don't believe we should reduce the fee. These are two separate things. We have the referendum, which is separate from me, but on this arrangement, I don't feel we should reduce the rate because of what's happening. I'm assuming that the school board is going to do the same on their side. That's not my business, but that's what happens. Does the school board send the check to you directly? So you get a check from them, okay? The self-reporting part on the tax certs, that's self-reporting on your side. We really don't know how much you collect. I mean, we don't know because it's self-reporting. Is that correct? If I would make the assumption of the $7,000 in a down year, would that be fairly accurate? I sure did, because the economy has changed. But if I use that number, that's a fair number. I'm on a lower side. Okay, because it's not only D-transfers, it's also refinances and all the other good stuff. So I'm going to stick with my number, $7,500. So that's my position at this point. If you go and look at what the state put out as tax, I don't want to call them tax collectors. They go everything from a tax clerk, an auditor, specialist analyst, examiner, manager, tax assessor, compliance officer, and administrator. Let's use administrator and supervisor. According to the state, the administrator is $64,400, and according to supervisors, $58,000. That's what it says. And, that's everything from a little county someplace else to the city of Allentown or whatever it would be. So I don't think we're out of line of where we're at based on what the position says. That's my personal arrangement. Now, whether you get an increase or not, I would like to hear what other people have after I gave you all the information that I figured out. Thank you.
I'm not going to, well, the 3 points that I'll make is the cost of living. We got those numbers today. I think it was 2.67, 2.6% or 2.7% in 2024. That was the cost of living increase determined by the Department of Labor. Am I correct? I'm sorry, I was off by a percent. Thank you. And I would also add too that in 2008, we probably had 6 staff in that office. That was reduced to 4. The business privilege clerk is no longer there. And then just the staff in 2024, they're getting 5.25%, and then 4.25% going forward for the next 4 years. So they are getting erased. That's all. I'll leave it at that.
Sorry.
Okay. We still are collecting business privilege for new businesses in the township. So when a contractor comes in, they go to zoning, we license them, I send it to Berkheimer to follow up with the taxes. We're still doing amusement licenses too. That's all these gas stations that have games in. Berkheimer did not take that over. So we're still doing that part of it.
I agree, but there's also $30,000 returns that we aren't processing at this point. And when you go, I agree, you're still doing it. So when a new business comes in and files permits, you got to, it's a form and gets taken care of. But you're not processing any of the returns or anything like that at this particular point. They're all gone. And Commissioner Jeff was correct that it was 6 in 2006, and we are currently maintaining 4. And it was actually 6 with a part-time person. So at this point, I don't know how that has any bearing on an increase or not. I personally believe that you should at least remain status quo based on the cost of living as far as increases go and not fall backwards. So that is there, but whether you get a kicker over and above that, that's another question for us to decide.
I just want to address the statement you made before about there's less audits. No, there's more audits now. There were a lot more prior to this. I mean, every different monies that were collected here had an audit with it. So you might think there's more because of what I'm just saying with the different taxes and whatnot. I mean, we used to have a woman come in that did the per capita side just for the school district, and she would spend 3 days there. Now, we're talking about taxes that the most you're going to pay is $16.50 if you get into the penalty period. So you go ahead and try to calculate all of that stuff. Which ones did I miss? And when you're using with 3 separate numbers, and again, I'm just bringing that out so people understand it's not less, I mean, not more now, it's actually less, yes. That's all.
Mr. Sloniker, that's not true. I'm audited every day. When I send over the financial report to Gavin, he scrutinizes it to the penny. Every day. The school district audits me every month when I do the treasurer's report. They go through, they question. So the township audits me every day, the school district audits every month, and I'm under a 3-year SOC audit that I meet with those SOC auditors, Zoom or whatever, once a week. So don't say stuff that you did 10 years, 20 years ago.
Are you finished, ma'am? All I'm saying is what you have now are reconciliations just to make sure that what you're giving them is corrected. That takes place with every treasurer that's been in there on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. That's not an audit. And again, this is what I did down at the county for Lehigh County. And what you're having, and I'm not saying that some of these things that you're doing were not audits, but it certainly isn't what you're saying, because, and it's not that, I think it's just because you don't realize what all goes into an audit, that's all. And I'm not trying
Mr.
to belittle
Sloniker,
you at all,
I
I'm just
certainly
saying
do.
what, and
Mr.
again, I'm
Sloniker,
trying
did
to
you ever
talk.
pass an audit when you were in there for 4 years?
Excuse me?
Did you ever pass an audit in 4 years that you were there?
Like, gosh golly, yeah.
I heard differently.
Well, and again, that's fine if you heard differently. you're absolutely wrong. That's fine.
We'll see.
Green, so the word audit, I have an article about audits. Everybody closes their books out every day in some way, shape, or form, dollar in, receipts, et cetera. That's not an audit to me. That is a clearing out. The guy that runs the register at a fast food place closes down as checked out. I do not want to get in this as a personal arrangement. I see this as, I'm trying to be fair and say that this position has not rolled back in the responsibilities. It's probably under more scrutiny today than it was back then because we have computers that check and everything else. I am not going to get into the riffraff of what happens on right or on the wrong day it is. I believe there's no rollback necessary. So if we could just either agree on or disagree on whether or not there's a rollback. And then the next thing to ask is if there is no rollback, do we give a raise and do we stick to a cost of living? And if the answer is yes, then the third question would be is, do we do a kicker on top of that? Those are the three questions that we have to answer tonight, in my opinion. That's all.
I would suggest that, I think a lot of times we do compare today, I mean, we're looking at 2006 to 2025. And, everything changes. The world's changed. Every job in this country has changed. And I don't think that sometimes you can't go back and compare because everything's automated these days, you know, so it makes everybody's job different. I definitely don't think there should be a reduction. But I think if there's never been an increase, I'm not opposed to a cost of living increase. So that's where I stand.
I feel the same, that there should be a cost, you know, a cost of living and giving, you know.
Yeah, and I definitely don't want to mislead. There have been increases. I'm just saying there were years where they went without. So, and I'm looking how that person progresses compared to other employees and cost of living. And I think cost of living minimum might be appropriate.
And also with having less staff now than what she had a few years ago. I just think that, you know, with that also.
And I can say I know what goes on in that office.
Same here.
Office with treasurer, and we're going to payment plans, we're gonna have maybe three garbage bills instead of one. It's still gonna, I can't see it apples for apples, and I can't, but, I'm not gonna make a recommendation on a percent, I'll rely on my colleagues.
If I may. We talked about this at the workshop, and there was some discussion that some technological advances may have helped alleviate some of the work of the treasurer. Some of it's enhanced it, particularly with the credit card acceptance and the changes in the auditing that's taken place. But some hard numbers, just so, and I did some quick numbers, whether they're correct or not, I'll leave it to the professionals. But I did some quick numbers. At a 3% raise, it would go from 40,454 to 41,666 in 26. In 27, it would go to 44,206. In 28, it would go to 46,532. And in 29, it would go to 47,927. That's assuming 3% per year on top of each year.
Plus the school district.
That, I'm just talking about what we're talking about. Don't have any numbers for the school district. If we did a 1% increase, again, adding it up per year, be 48,854 for 26, 41,262 for 27, 41,674 for 28, and 42,091 for 29. Those are numbers. So, and when you look at Commissioner Warren's 20-year look back, contrary to what's been said, and I'm not saying anything that Commissioner Warren said is incorrect, the correct number is that there were 10 years out of 20 where the treasurer didn't get an increase. It wasn't the treasurer didn't get an increase for 10 years.
Correct.
So there's a difference between saying that. So there was no increase in 6, 7, 8, and 9, and then there were 2 3% increases in 10 and 11, and there was none in 12 and 13. There was a 2% in 14, 1% in 15, 2% in 16, 1 in 17. There were no increases in 18 and 19, a 2% in 20, and then there were no increases in 21 and 22, and then 2% for 23, 24, and 25. So just to correct that, that's based on the numbers that Commissioner Warren has. So those are the numbers that I'm looking at. Jack, please correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't know if you prepared any of those numbers.
No, I got those from the library.
No, I'm
Yeah, I'm
talking
just
about
trying
the
to say
numbers
where
that-
I got them from.
I'm talking about the numbers
Yeah.
that I just created, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you for those numbers, Commissioner Pelagian.
So to follow up, if you look at 20 years, it doesn't make a difference. I'm looking at now versus what my clerks are getting. That's my comparison. We all know that over the last 20 years, we all didn't get raises sometimes, and sometimes it was rollbacks and arrangements. So that's history. So when I'm comparing what my clerks are getting and what this position is, that's my baseline. The issue is that your term ends in December. Is that correct? Okay. We have an obligation to no matter what happens on the referendum that's on the agenda coming up, we have an obligation that whoever's going to run for this office knows what they're going to get paid. And I think we have to do a 4-year arrangement. When you do cost of living in advance, the disadvantage on that is when you get runaway inflation, sometimes you can't afford to pay the runaway inflation because it's gone crazy. So if we did the cost of living and put a cap on it, then at that point, we at least protect ourselves. And if you look at what Commissioner Robb just did, there's a couple times there's 3, there's a couple times there's 2, and there's 1. So if we did a cost of living increase capped at 3%, we protected ourselves so that we don't get something where it hits 5, 6, and 7. On the same token, if the cost of living ends up being 1%, then it's 1%. But I'm always afraid to give an open checkbook without a cap. So I think there should be a cap on this thing. And then whoever runs for the position going on can sit down and say, I know what's coming in and where we're at. All the other things that we're talking about, the vacation and all this stuff, no changes on that. That's part of the compensation package as far as I see. And as an elected official, if you want to show up, you show up, and if you don't, you don't. That's just the way it is, because you're an elected official. So it may sound crazy, but that's how it is. Joe can come anytime he wants, and that's the way it's done. So my proposal to the board would be the following, that we would do a cost of living increase per year with a cap of no more than 3% in any given year. That takes care of the outliers that's up there. I can't?
We can't do it that way. We have to set an actual number. We can't have a fluctuation.
Oh, sorry, didn't understand that part. Okay.
That's why we're here.
Okay, well, then that just blows my whole theory. You should have shut me up a long time ago. I didn't know that. Yeah, I was thinking of the business guy, sorry. Then I just suggest we do a flat 2% across the board, call it a day. It's an average. Now, that would be his numbers,
No, it would not.
or whatever numbers you,
I gave 1 and 3.
somebody explain to me how we do it technically to get this
And
accomplished.
all I'm asking here is, you're saying 2%. Is that 2% per year, or is that 2% for the 4 years? And again, there's a difference. Okay, and just try to be clarification on that.
So if it's $40,000, 2% would be a $800 increase. And then the second year, it would be 2% on 40 plus 2% on the 800, which would be 800 and 160. So it'd be a 960. Don't ask me to go to the next one because I can't do that one in my head. But that's how I would do it and follow through. So it would be 2% on the aggregate each year for a period of 4 years. Now, if you want to try to make sure that to protect yourselves, just do it for 2 years and call it a day. and then come back in 2 years and revisit it. Can't do that. Oh, okay, okay.
I understand you're new to it.
All right. Then my proposal would be, as I just explained, the 2% and 2 on top of the 2. So the math has to be what it would be. So it was,
Any other numbers by anybody?
yes, compounding is a proper term, thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's providing everybody's agreeing with what I'm saying.
I agree with the 2% with you on that per year for the next, or for the next 2% for 4 years. Yeah, for the term.
Have to look at it.
Yes, sorry.
I agree.
What I'm coming up with is 41,262 for 26, 42,086 for 27, 42,926 for 28, and 43,778 for 29. Quick math. Again, I defer to the experts, but that's.
It's just there's rounding differences.
Correct, correct. Yeah, I just, it's, yeah.
Jack's the official.
But you're talking 41 and change, 42 and change, almost 43, and almost 44 and 29. Round numbers. Sorry.
Now, does this also mean that the tax certs stay in place, number one? We're not messing with that? That's an ordinance, okay, all right. And then the medical, does that stay in place? Or is that,
Administrative code or home rule charter.
okay?
It's the administrative code, yeah, that'll.
I'm just looking at the overall compensation, that's how I'm looking.
Elected officials obtain the same benefits as regular.
Okay, all right, I'm fine. So you will need a motion for this, is that correct?
We're establishing
That's all right.
the rate thing. So, again, we can go with the 2%, we can go with 25%. I mean, whatever comes up here right now. I mean, this is where people have been talking up here about what the rate was.
Well, that's my proposal, and if anybody has a better idea than what I'm proposing, I'd like to hear it.
It has to be the same number all 4 years, or it can be
No,
like, we can go like 3,
And
2?
this is what I was saying earlier, that
Okay.
I've been on when you got a rate of X number of dollars for the first year and nothing thereon. And it's whatever the board comes up with. Now, the only thing that I presented it when I was the treasurer here, I presented it, to me, it has to be somewhat competitive so that you get the best people applying for the job. And that's just making sense, so. So do I have a definite then that you want to use 2% for each year then?
So you made a statement that it has to be competitive, so let's go down that road just for the discussion.
And again, this is my view of the thing when I was in here.
Okay.
That if you're not going to be somewhat competitive, and that's how you got rid of some tax collectors at different places, you went with things that just, it was like, why would anybody do that? Basically, you're coming down that you would cut them 15%. And again, you're doing the same thing. Now, and again, here, understood what you said earlier, that you, okay, this, and this, and we took away that and whatnot. In my opinion, this is my opinion, nobody else's, there's a lot less that is under the control of the treasurer now than there were even a term or 2 terms ago.
Okay, so I did this. I went to other neighboring municipalities and did some research. In a particular municipality, they have 2 financial directors, for the sake of discussion.
Sounds like South Whitehall.
It is, actually it is, okay. They pay $83,604 for 2 of them, and then it drops down to $50,000 and change, 49 and 42. I don't know if they're part-time or full-time, but those are the numbers. Then I went to another municipality, and those numbers were similar. They were in the upper 70s to lower, but their position is different, and they fit more like my financial director because A, they're required to be educated in the area of finance. They have special things that be there. Our next person who runs for this slot has none of those requirements, and it could be somebody who comes in that basically has no educational background in running a treasurer's office, and so therefore I would be paying, the township would be paying somebody in the 80s, and there's no justification based on the credentials. And that's part of my issue on another. So that's why I can't see going up to those numbers, because I don't know what I'm going to get as far as a qualified person. So what I'm trying to do is be fair and take care of the cost of living arrangement. So this was my thought process that I went through in the last 24 hours trying to figure this thing out when I got back from vacation. So this is where I stand. And if you want me to make a motion, and if everybody's agreeable to that, I would make a motion based on what I said, as well as making a note that I did take into consideration the experience that I would be able to get if I would be paying somebody $80,000, $85,000 a year. There's a different ballgame there. It's a totally different ballgame. That's what I'm saying, okay? Thank you.
Any further discussion from the board?
No, but I think if we've all talked about it, is somebody gonna make a motion? I mean, a specific, thank you,
And that's what we're looking for.
which is what I mean, is somebody gonna propose? Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Myers, do you have the numbers for 2%?
26, 41, 263, 27, 42, 088, 28, 42, 930, 29, 43, 789.
So your rounding's just slightly different than mine, just a tiny little minuscule. Got it.
The school, so assuming the school district remains the same, it's 24K at the school district, plus I'm going to use the number 7,500, so I'm consistent in the other. So that would be 31, correct? Is that where 75?
And I don't want to interrupt you here, but the tax certs, you can't give any number on that, because I've been here when the rates were down here, and you did a whole lot of business, the rates went up here, you did real little. So you shouldn't really bring that in my opinion, because it's just what happens during that time period. Not that, you shouldn't look at that, oh, that's more income. It is more income, but since it's so unreliable with the highs and the lows, I don't see where you can go ahead and put that together and make it, oh, this is the package, because you don't have any control over what the package is.
I've been a real estate broker for 48 years. I understand the highs and lows. Trust me, I understand it.
And I know you do.
Yeah,
However,
I just for my own peace of mind.
You're trying to do this for a 4-year period, and
Okay.
even during those 4-year periods, when you've been a real estate broker,
Oh, I know.
you know you couldn't go ahead and say, oh, I know 2027, that's gonna be the 1 year where we're gonna go, and
agree.
oh my God, we're gonna go in the dumper. That's what I'm saying. So you can't, don't use that to me. That's the last thing you should use as criteria for what the raise should be or non-raise.
That's fine. So then I'm making a motion that on our current, the motion's there, so we're gonna, don't I have to know the numbers before they do it? Go ahead.
I just want to know, is there any other, I mean, besides you coming up with exact numbers here, because I also have to have input if there's any from the floor, okay? So, just so we're getting everybody involved. So is there anybody that wants to, from the public, that wants to make any comments on this? No.
Joni Tedesco, 424 4th Street. Can you please reiterate for me the salary currently for the treasurer? And is it my understanding that she gets X amount of money from the school district? Can you please reiterate that for me?
According to the current number from Deputy Myers, she gets $40,454.
$40,000,
$454 from the township.
and what about from the school district?
Leave that to the treasurer.
Okay, so we're looking at about $64,450 total for the treasurer. How can she make the same or less than one of the tax clerks in that office? Yes, sir.
First of all, I'm in disagreement on the tax search because it does exist, one way or the other. In our government today, there are people who are patrolmen who make more than our chief. There are line directors that make more than our mayor. It is just the nature of the beast. So when you elect to run for this office, the bright side is you know exactly what you're going to be paid and how it works. And if you consider it to be fair, you run for it. If you don't, then you work in another endeavor that's better for you. The bright side is that we're not sitting here saying only 1 year and then figure it out after that. We're laying it on the table so they know. So yeah, sometimes it's not uncommon for an employee in any business, private or public, will make more than a supervisor in the world of business. I have seen situations where online staff people make more than middle management. It's just not uncommon. You can't justify to sit down and say that this position is entitled more because a line clerk gets X. Has no bearing on it. My thought is based on what I did in my research. And
Okay,
how
so
it
that's
goes.
your thought.
It is.
What are the other commissioners' thoughts? Mr. Pelisian,
What-
Mr. Warren?
What Mr. Snyder said, it's what it is. I mean, we look at what the contracts are just here, and the perfect example was the police. And we try to make the chief the most paid person. However, with overtime and whatnot, it's going to be behind. It's just simple as that. And again, the idea here, just like he reiterated, that when you get into this job, you know what you're going to get paid, and you either say, yeah, that's enough, or that I can do better. And then you make your decision based on that. And it's not the norm for people to look at things like that. They just go, okay, I'm getting into a position where I'm going to grow, and this will happen, and this will happen. Here, you know what's going to happen for 4 years. You don't know what's going to happen 4 years afterwards, but you do know this is what's going to happen.
Well, and you're saying 2% each year? Is that what it was, 2% each year?
Yes, 2% each year for the 4 terms.
I'm sorry.
Yes, 2% for each.
Okay. Well, but then also, even if she gets a 2% increase each year, or whomever becomes, I guess I want to say the treasurer, but I don't know, according to Mr. Snyder, he's pushing for a financial director. But it's still going to be to the point where those tax clerks in that office are still going to be making more than what the person is that has all the responsibility. And I still don't think that that's fair.
Just to be fair, I work kind of the same position full-time.
Uh-huh.
And I make less than what the township does, these clerks. And I have a lot more work. So, it just depends on where, she's elected. So we're looking at giving her a raise and helping her, or any future raises also. So just saying that it is out there. People have the same jobs, they make less, they make more. It just, depending what they're willing to work for. When they go for this job, they know what they're gonna get paid, and they decide if they're gonna take it, or, get voted in or not.
All right, thank you. But I still don't think it should be a financial director.
Nilsa Martinez, 2631 Halleck Drive. My comment on this issue is, earlier we said the cost of living had increased by 3.3%. So we should at least offer the person in this position, the treasurer's position, a raise in comparison with the cost of living. And if that person is doing the job, they should be entitled to a 3% at least. Thank you.
Any further comments from the floor? Okay, so as I see.
Tom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What does everyone think, maybe 3% for 1 year and then do 2%? Or we gotta, sorry.
Right now, what I went ahead and did was use his numbers because nobody spoke up until then. And again, we can do the 2%, you can vote for it, against it, or, whatever, how you want to do it. That, all I'm saying is that's where we're at right now with nobody, like I said, you didn't speak up sooner. And no, and again, that's fine. It's just that maybe that will be voted down, and then we'd have to use more or less, whatever. So, what we're going to be voting on then is establishing the salary for the treasurer for those years. And what was recommended was 2% per year by Commissioner Snyder. Do I have a motion for that? Because that's different than what we have written down here. We have just that we're going to be doing it. And that's how I see it. Now, maybe I'm wrong.
You don't need a separate motion. You already have one on the floor.
Okay.
So I heard, based on the comments from Mr. Snyder and Mr. Myers read the numbers, we can read them again, that there should be a vote based on those numbers. And if that vote passes, the ordinance passes. If it fails, then you have to set the salary, so then you need to come up with new numbers and vote again until you pass the ordinance. So we can read them again if there was any uncertainty.
I don't know if they need it. I pretty much know what it is.
Sure, I've got Jack, tell me if I got it wrong since I've got the mic on. 2026 is $41,263. 2027 is $42,088. 2028 is $42,930. 2029 is $43,789.
Okay, does everyone have that? Need anything repeated? Okay, Ms. Secretary, could you please poll the board?
Commissioner Fox?
Yes.
Commissioner Scarfaro is a yes. Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelagian?
Sorry for delaying, I think the comment about the cost of living adjustment is valid, but we don't know what's going to happen 2, 3, 4 years down the road, so I'm going to vote yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
President Sloniker? Motion would pass 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, Bill number 4-2025, an ordinance authorizing the acceptance of a proposal for providing operational maintenance services for traffic control devices for Whitehall Township in accordance with Section 3.20 in the Home Rule Charter, which requires authorization of acquisitions in excess of $25,000 by ordinance. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Warren.
Do I have a second?
I'll second Scarfaro.
Any discussion on the board?
This is maintenance for the traffic signals, correct?
Correct.
And we had some outages where they had to put generators out there. Was it because those battery backups were not working, malfunction, or not in place? Or don't know?
No, when the
Alright.
power goes out, we have to, and the batteries wear down,
Okay.
we have to.
So we do
but
feel like the current, they are servicing.
They
what
haven't
it's-
increased their prices in like 8 years.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Any comments from the floor? Ms. Secretary, can you please poll the board?
Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Scarfaro is a yes. Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelagian?
Yes.
Commissioner Fox?
Yes.
And President Sloniker.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Bill number 5-2025, an ordinance authorizing the acceptance of a proposal for purchase of one bandit brush chipper for the Recreation Department in accordance with Section 3.20 in the Home Rule Charter, which requires authorization of acquisitions in excess of $25,000 by ordinance. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Pelagian.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Warren.
Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the floor? Ms. Secretary, could you please poll the board?
Commissioner Pelagian?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Scarfaro is a yes. President Sloniker?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Bill number 6-2025, an ordinance to initiate a referendum for the purpose of amending the township charter to eliminate the treasurer position under Article 7 of the charter and replace it with the appointment of a finance director under Article 7 of the charter. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion.
Do I have a second? Again, do I have a second? And the third time, do I have a second? Hearing none, that bill is then done. Public hearing and voting on
Excuse me.
resolution?
Am I allowed to make a comment on that, any way, shape, or form?
You can, I don't mind.
Okay. So there was no second, and I want to clear the air on a couple things. I'm being lambasted on Facebook. Everybody knows that, it's watching it. No, I don't have anybody for this position, okay? No, I'm not in collusion with the mayor on anything on that side of the table. No, I'm not a surrogate. I prepared a statement of the reason.
Excuse me, you did say you were Joe Marks' associate.
Ma'am, we don't shout out from the audience.
Okay. I did prepare tonight a lengthy presentation of why I would like to consider it and would have been done at the workshop, but I was out of town. Now, I would like the opportunity to take the time to do this and just go through it and ask you to reconsider. There's two reasons why. One, I was told based in my meeting that if I hand you all this stuff, it gets treated one way. If I tell it to you, it gets treated another way. So I would prefer to explain to you what's going on, number one. Number two, there's a report that just occurred in State College where the treasurer's office basically was bilged, allegedly bilged, out of $525,000 over a period of 5 years. And one of the statements that was made by the investigating group is that many municipalities need to have professional people working in these departments because it's gotten to be more complicated. I have the article here. It is true that I did tell you the last time that I did not want to, and I consider it to be a dead issue. I did not realize that at that time that our treasurer's office is up for reelection in this year. I thought I had another year. If we do not address this issue, then for all intents and purposes, without reviewing what's in our charter now and looking at the detail, then at that particular point, what we have is what we have for the next 5 years. And I don't want to hear anybody sit down and say, coulda, woulda, shoulda, because we're stuck for 5 years under the current path of where the charter was written 52 years ago as compared to what we're dealing with today. And all the items that we're talking about, whether it is the previous administration, the previous treasurer, or the current treasurer, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. And as a group, I think we have to have the responsibility to at least listen to what the reason why I came up with these reasons. And if you still feel they're invalid, fine. If I would have been at the workshop, I would have done it. And if I would have known I had another year, I would have waited. But I don't have that choice. And I don't think it's fair to sit down and put this on the agenda after the primaries won, because we could, but maybe we can't, and why challenge it? But at least listen to the items that we're talking about here. Because when we have the problem going down the road, I don't want to hear anybody call me every name in the book on the whiners that we're not doing this and we're not doing that, because the real answer is we can't. And I'm tired of today. My wife was in a doctor's office and got questioned, what the hell am I doing here? Why are they calling me all these names? And I've been going to that doctor's for almost 30 years. And you know what? I'm entitled to at least sit down and say, I did my homework and here's what it is and why, and put it on the record. And if you don't want to do it, that's fine. But I don't know if anybody else sitting here did the amount of work on this thing and looked at the cross-references, why I'm suggesting that. And that's what I'm asking you to do. At least hear me out and allow me to put the motion up for reconsideration. And if you turn it down, so be it. But when these problems come up, I don't want to hear anybody come up for public comment and say, we're here to discuss it and here's what's going on. I would love to hand you the paperwork, but here's the problem. I hand you the paperwork, it's now public record, and I got a new set of problems. So I can't hand it to you. It's dumb as that sounds. And I've elected not to do that. I made 20 copies tonight, so that's what I'd like to do.
I hear what you're saying. Now, for me, I would just go ahead and say, I'm not sure. And really, I'm not sure. I just want my other commissioners to hear whether or not you want to hear Commissioner Snyder's rationale for what he wants to bring up.
So Ken, I just want to say, I appreciate the work that you do. And I know you've looked into this a lot, and I appreciate the time that you've taken to do that. I do. For me, I think there was just a referendum a year ago. And I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm going to say it was upwards of 70% of the voters did not vote for that referendum. And I'm not saying I'm opposed to having a finance director one day. For me, I would not vote for a referendum to be placed because I think the voters voiced their opinion already, and it was just a year ago. So for me, I'm out. 2 years ago, for me, 2 years ago, I still feel it was voted on. And personally, for me, I don't think it's the time. So that's where I sit. But I do appreciate the work that you do, and I want you to know that. Thank you.
And Ken, we've had a discussion on this. We talked about this last month. And I said last month, and I stand behind what I say, it's too soon. And I supported the referendum the last time. I don't think there was enough support produced by the commissioners who were in favor of it at that time. And it's nothing personal against the treasurer at all. But, you know, a couple things that were brought up tonight about the salary for the treasurer. There's no requirement for anybody to have any type of financial background. A resident living in a township over 25 years age and having lived in the township for 3 years, 1 year, they can be elected treasurer. So there's no other qualification. And you could have someone go in there that knows nothing about money, maybe declare bankruptcy, and they would still be treasurer. And I personally don't think a township the size of Whitehall, which is an extremely unique municipality, and all the municipalities I work in, Whitehall is the most unique, because we could have big city problems in a small town atmosphere with dirt roads and spots. It's amazing. That being said, the budget of $29 million and relying on an elected person, and in many instances, we're lucky to have someone like our current treasurer who takes the job seriously, regardless of what's been going on in the office on either side. But we're not going to be guaranteed that. I think your referendum idea is correct. It's just not at this time. As Commissioner Scarfaro said, it was voted on, and it wasn't 2 years ago. It was about 18 months, November. And I just do not think there's the political will in this township to do that. The voters have spoken, and I think we're just beating a dead horse to bring this up over and over again. And I understand where you're coming from, that you don't want to hear, why are we in this situation, and why. I don't think anybody sitting up here wants to hear that. But I also don't think that, I think we as the representatives of the taxpayers and the voters in the township need to acknowledge their decision and move forward from there.
Still not, all right. I agree with both of them, and I still say with, it's too early, and I still say no, let the people have their vote still. They agreed on it 2 years ago, and still the same.
So, with that being, whoops, I forgot, Jeff.
You didn't hear from me?
Okay.
In absence of you not being at the workshop, I have no problem hearing what your viewpoints are. I do think it would be a tough sell, given the short period between a pretty remarkable outcome last time. But like I said, I had the opportunity to make a pitch for a project that I'm passionate about, that a lot of people are passionate about, and I have no objection to you putting your thoughts on record. I mean, I don't think we have the votes up here to move forward with it, but
It's obvious the votes aren't here, okay? But then here's what the commissioners.
Do you mind if?
Oh, that's right, you've been
yeah,
giving,
it's
go ahead, I'm
just the guy
sorry.
here. That's all right. No, and what you bring up, very rational and everything, but as far as I know, one of the largest bilking of people in a community was not taken place by a treasurer. It was taken by somebody who was in charge of the water thing. I think it was Lower Macungie or Upper Macungie, and it was millions of dollars. And these people, and this person wasn't like, oh yeah, let's vote for her. I mean, this just happened. They looked over her qualifications, they appointed her there, and bad things happen. And it doesn't matter, again, whether you're voted for or not. What matters is the person, whether they're gonna go ahead and give all that they can to make that job as good as it can be. That's how I always looked at it, and that's how I hope everybody who wants to do that kind of stuff, whether it's a voted position or it's appointed, that you're always trying to do your best.
And what I would add to that is, since the issue occurred at this township, there's a whole different process involved, where the point of sale occurs at that window, you don't leave that window until it's done. And so I don't want people leaving here saying, well, we didn't do anything back then, we're not doing anything now. There's a whole new process in there where there's checks and balances, so.
First of all, it has nothing to do with the bilking. That was just an article that came on the website today, so that's not, the real issue is then, if that's the case, then here's the deal. I don't want to listen to comments telling us what we do or don't do. That's got to stop. The information coming across online that's saying that we are getting back money in the back pocket for this BS has got to stop, okay? Hear me out, I'm not accustomed to my reputation being drugged through the mud for this kind of stuff. I did my homework, I was up Sunday night to 2 o'clock in the morning and retyped it today. I can't say it, that's fine, but I'm gonna tell you, the first time someone starts this stuff, where the office is closed, I don't wanna hear it, because the office does not get closed under my system. My system is accountable, she's accountable, okay? And she does a fantastic job, but the next one, when it doesn't work out, you're making a decision for the next 5 years based on what happens today. So you just tell all your little keyboard guys to knock it off, because I'm really sick of it, to be honest with you.
Don't read it.
Hear me out. There's a difference if I read it and don't, but when you're sitting down and you're going in a doctor's office and someone starts asking you questions, you know what? That's where the line starts to get drawn, all right? When you're going to accuse me of I got a guy in my back pocket for something, let me tell you something. That's BS. The job up here pays $4 grand a year, okay? It doesn't cover my gas bill in my truck, all right? Other guys are being paid 12 grand to do the same thing that we're doing, because I saw that. I didn't bargain to be called, my reputation be drugged through the mud, because I'm trying to do a job where something was done in 1972 that is outdated. It's that simple. You all agree something's got to be changed, but you don't want to do it, and that's fine. But then as the board, you got to put a stop to this, or I'm going to seek the legal counsel and say, you figure out what I got to do that my name stop being drugged through the mud, because I didn't come here to deserve that from anybody, and I expect that every one of you guys back me up in this stuff, because I'm tired of it. I'm tired. Because I know this man and supported this man, I get accused. The only way I know Joe, he came to my office twice trying special projects in his community that I supported. I have no business dealings with him. I don't know what he does or where he does. It's BS. I lose business because of some things that I do up here that I walk away from. And the bottom line is, I don't think it's fair, and I think that if you were in this situation, I would support you as commissioners and say, knock it off. And you need to do the same thing for me, and you need to do the same thing for Joe, because it's BS. We sit these meetings sometimes an hour and a half before we get to business. I have on this agenda a special meeting. Why? Because of stuff that's going on in the towns that we need to address as commissioners that we can't, because we spend hour after hour on bullshit. And enough is enough. We got a recreation situation going on. We got $65,000 that's being reimbursed because of a tax appeal. Our budget isn't going the way it's supposed to be, but nobody up here sits and talks about this stuff. We just put it off because it's late at night, and enough is enough. Either you want to do the job and run the township the way it's got to be and deal with the issues, or do me a favor, we just sit here and say yes and walk away. And that's exactly where we're at. And when we get to later on in the meeting, I have a list of that stuff to go over, because it's here. It's the real world. I don't know what to tell you. He gives the reports, I read them. I'm assuming you all read them. And if that's what's going to happen, that's what I'm asking you to do. Please back me up and work my way through this arrangement, because I'm tired of it. Sure.
So, I think we can appreciate your sentiment and how you feel, right? We can't stop any one of these people, and anybody, from commenting whatever they want to comment. Right. Freedom of speech, right? We know a lot of it might be bullshit, it's not true, it's trying to get somebody's attention, but I think the problem, we can't make people educate themselves on what actually the facts are, right? So maybe it's frustrating to a certain point, and I think we all can relate to that, right? There's social media warriors out there every day, right? And they like to stir the pot, they like to get clicks, and they like to do whatever, right? But at the end of the day, all we can control are ourselves and what we do and what we say. It's frustrating. I totally can relate to you on that. It is frustrating. I appreciate the work you do. As far as the referendum, I still stand where I stand on that. It's too soon. People made their choice. They voted how they wanted to vote. And it has nothing to do with you, or maybe what is, or what's maybe gonna be better for this township. It has nothing to do with the person that's in the role of treasurer or tax collector. I think that it's a political issue, right? And it's gonna take a lot of support from us making awareness into the communities, right? It's dedicated time, and I just don't think now's the time for that. That's where I stand. I appreciate your stance on it, though. I do. And I'm not saying I don't agree with having, a finance director. I work in a township where they have a finance department. It works lovely. It works well. I just don't think now's the time. But I understand your frustration, and all I can say is hopefully people can do their homework and actually learn what the facts are, maybe come to a meeting, and maybe research how local government is run. I can't speak for those people on social media. I choose to ignore it. Personal attacks are hard, Ken. I know. I ran for office in this township. My children and I went through a lot, and we endured a lot. I can totally relate that people are relentless, and they don't know how to affect you in your personal life. On the opposite hand of that, we are sitting in elected seats, and so we have to have some sort of expectation of what could be and what we're going to endure, right? And it's not always going to be easy, but you know what? You don't see anybody else's name on the ballot when they're running, right? It's easier for them to type away on a computer or a phone and make comments, but their name's not on that ballot. They're not the ones out there campaigning for office. It's us sitting up here. We're doing this job for, like you said, $4,000 a year. We're putting in the hours, 2 Mondays a night, plus extra meetings, plus extra time researching. Nobody knows how much time you put into this. Nobody really has to do this job.
Actually, my wife does.
Well, yeah. But what I'm saying is, and I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the back, but you know what? Let me see more names on that ballot. It's election year, it's election time, petitions are coming out, so if anybody thinks they can do a better job or they have a better understanding of what we actually do up here, put your name on the ballot and see how it goes. Anyway, thank you to each of my commissioners up here. I appreciate your time, and I know it's not easy, but I think everybody's doing the best they can. All the elected officials sitting up here, and, well, I appreciate you all, so thank you.
Okay. We are going to have to close the tax office again, and I know it's going to upset you, and I know it's going to upset the public, and I know we're going to see it on social media. I would like the commissioners to sit down and change the charter, so I have some control of that township.
Are you kidding me? You just said that?
Yes, so I have control of that, not to have a finance director, so I can have control of that office when I have 2 out of 4 out.
And apparently you and your group didn't read what I had put together, because you know what? That's exactly what I talked about. You could apply for the position. It's not even worth it.
Wait, what did I say?
No, wait, if I could just add something. Tina, I don't think it's anything you said wrong, but Ken's been a proponent of going through the charter, and I think a couple meetings ago, he did ask for volunteers, and it was anybody to sit down to start reviewing the charter, right? Just because it's so antiquated. So I think that's what he's...
But what I'm saying is we need to do it now. I've gone for 2 years. No, the tax office issue needs to be addressed now, not 2 years from now. I need to get the authority in there. When 2 out of 4 employees call off sick, I have no control. When they don't do their jobs, I don't have any control. So I have to close the tax office. Guess who's outside the tax office window dealing with people screaming because they can't pay their taxes, they don't like this. So you get hit on social media, I deal with it every day.
So let me ask you this. Instead of feeding the whiners, why didn't you call me up and ask me what I asked for in the first place? Because everything you're talking about is in this crazy arrangement. Everything you talked about. The difference is you wouldn't be an elected official. You could apply for the job and you probably would have qualified, believe it or not. But the end result is now you sit here and say to me, why don't we change the charter? What do you think I've been working on for the last 4 months? No, I'm sorry. This is what I've been asking for, and the fellow commissioner said no, and now you sit up and say, why don't we change the charter? Well, hell, your minions on Whiners doesn't say it that way. As far as they're concerned, I'm beating you up. Why don't you ask me what I put together? Because I did. I have 3 pages and did a lot of investigation on the charter and looked at it and seeked legal counsel. So what you're saying is we should do what I have here.
But we need to address the issue now, not 3
It could be addressed on January the 1st.
You're gonna fix all the problems in the
It can be addressed, well, you never took the time to pick up the phone and call me, so the end result, you don't really know. Sorry.
I've been sending emails to the administration for 4 years.
I have talked about this at meetings month after month after month, and nobody took the initiative to dig in it as deep as I have. And if you had any input on it, you could have picked up the phone and says, Ken, let's meet one-on-one and talk about the issues. I can't talk about the issues from my side. Hear me out. To sit down and say this is crazy.
Wait, boys and girls. Right now, I asked question of the people up here, did they want to go further with this? The consensus is not right
No,
now.
but-
And again, and that's all I'm trying to do.
So what's this treasurer saying this now for, Tom? Come
I-
on.
Again,
I shouldn't be upset for that
again,
statement? Change the charter?
Like
Oh
I
my
said,
God.
I understand where you're coming from, and again, I don't know if you researched it enough to talk to him. I don't know.
She
All I'm
runs the
saying is-
department, for
All I'm
God's sakes.
saying is we're going on now, because
Fine.
we've discussed this enough. So, public hearing and voting on resolutions. Resolution number 3357, a resolution approving the retirement and the commencement of monthly pension benefits to former Lieutenant Gregory Beeler. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Warren.
Do I have a second?
Fox, yes.
Any comments or questions from the board? Go ahead.
Just like to congratulate Lieutenant Beeler on his retirement. I'd like to congratulate Lieutenant Beeler on his retirement. He was a valued member of the Whitehall Police Department. I had a lot of respect for Greg. He was a great police officer. He was a great communicator, and he served us well for 28 years. So kudos to Greg. Wish him Godspeed.
I guess, I would say every time I encountered Mr. Beeler, I saw the utmost professionalism, even in all our staff. I encounter a lot of our police officers, they probably don't know who I am, and every time I encounter one, I just see nothing, it makes me proud to know we have a great force.
Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the floor?
Karen Pashevko, 3303 Musselman Court. Did you talk about bill number 7-2025, or did I miss it? Okay, we were talking about, it was removed, sorry. Never mind, I didn't know, it's not on my list, thank you, sorry.
Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Pelagian?
Yes.
Aye.
Motion passed, 6-0.
Resolution 3358, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Township of Whitehall to establish the police pension contribution rate for members of the fund. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion, Pelagian.
Do I have a second?
Yes, Fox.
Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the audience? Mrs. Secretary, could you please poll the board?
Commissioner Pelagian?
Yes.
Commissioner Fox? Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner Scarfaro is a yes. Commissioner, or President Sloniker?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Resolution 3359, a resolution approving the cost of living adjustment for eligible recipients of the police pension fund. Do I have a motion?
Fox.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Warren.
Any comments or questions from the board?
I would just say that this number is established by the Labor Council, or the Secretary of Labor in the state. It's based on the cost of living in the Philadelphia metropolitan area. It's not a number that we decide, it's decided by the state.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the floor? Ms. Secretary, could you please poll the board?
Commissioner Fox?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelagian?
Yes.
Commissioner Scarfaro is a yes. President Sloniker?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Resolution 3360, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners, Township of Whitehall, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, establishing Camp Whitehall rates for the year 2025. Do I hear a motion?
Scarfaro motion?
Do I have a second?
Fox.
Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the floor? Ms. Secretary, can you please poll the board?
Commissioner Scarfaro is a yes. Commissioner Fox?
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelagian?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
President Sloniker?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Resolution 3361, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners, Township of Whitehall, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, establishing pool pass rates for the year 2025. Do I hear a motion?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the floor? Ms. Secretary, could you please poll the board?
Commissioner Fox?
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelagian?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Scarfaro is a yes. President Sloniker?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Resolution 3362, a resolution for sewage facilities plan revision for the new land development 3434/3435 North Front Street Apartments, Whitehall, PA. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Pelagian.
Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the floor? Ms. Secretary, could you please poll the board?
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelagian?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Fox?
Yes.
Commissioner Scarfaro is a yes. President Sloniker?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Resolution 3363, a resolution conditionally approving the major subdivision / land development plan of MacArthur Commons redevelopment 2-revised located at 2601 plus 2631 MacArthur Road, index number 2021-23A. Do I have a motion?
There's another one, but this one is.
That's the one I had marked.
Mr. President, I'm going to recuse myself from voting or discussion on Resolution 3364 concerning the 5173 Washington Avenue subdivision, as I was the consultant on that project.
Okay. Resolution 3364, a resolution conditionally approving the minor subdivision plan of 5173 Washington Avenue, located at 5173 Washington Avenue, index number 2055-24A. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
Any comments and questions from the board?
All I can say is I looked at the plan. The plan is taking one large property and dividing it looks like it appears that it's dividing the open space, and it's proposing a home that's consistent with the neighborhood.
Any other questions?
Just two questions, one from our department head, Lee Rackus, and one from the engineer. Meets all the requirements that we would require for approval? Yes? Township engineer?
Yes.
Okay. Same thing from the solicitor, meets all the requirements?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
Any comments or questions from the floor? Ms. Secretary, can you please poll the board?
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes?
Commissioner Fox?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelagian? Recused himself?
Commissioner Ward?
Aye.
Commissioner Scarpelli is a yes. President Slonica?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Resolution 3365, a resolution authorizing the waiver of required water heater permit fees as established by the Whitehall Township Codified Ordinances, Chapter 29, Fees for Whitehall Township Public Library. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion, Warren.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Pelagian.
Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the floor? Ms. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Pelagian?
Yes.
Commissioner Fox?
Yes.
Scarfaro is a yes. President Slonica?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Resolution 3366, a resolution reappointing Robin Rummel to serve on the Whitehall Township Building Code Board of Appeals. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion, Warren.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Pelagian.
Any comments or questions from the board?
Just want to thank all our members that step up to serve on a board. It's more than a lot of people are doing. It takes a lot of time. Thank you.
Any comments or questions from the floor? Ms. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Pelagian?
Yes.
Commissioner Fox?
Yes.
Commissioner Scarfaro is a yes. President Slonica?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Now, the next one, I'll read that, and then we're going to go to our solicitor. Resolution 3367, a resolution of Whitehall Township authorizing the Copley-Whitehall Sewer Authority to act as its agents for matters related to Regional Act 537 plan.
We received some comments from the chief executive of the Lehigh County Authority just this afternoon on this resolution. It appears that their proposal is very similar to what I had drafted, but I'd ask that you table this and consider it again next month after I have a chance to review it, since I only received it a few hours ago.
Are we all in agreement to listen to what our attorney tells us? Are we going to go against them, rally them? Okay, we'll go with what you said. Oh, wait a minute, we have a comment.
I'm not trying to go against the Attorney Gross. There was a comment, though, that this time was of the essence for this. And how does that work? Does that penalize the township at all?
The letter that I received this afternoon says that they were looking for comments on their new resolution by March 1st, so we would certainly still have time. They don't ask that it be adopted by March 1st, so there should be time.
Okay, so Resolution 3367 is going to be tabled. Resolution 3368, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor in Whitehall Township to enter into a stipulation and settlement agreement regarding an appeal of Desirable Home Solutions LLC from the decision of the Whitehall Township Zoning Hearing Board dated June 28, 2024, denying applicants' application for variance, Lehigh County Court of Common Pleas, Civil Action Number 2024-C-2348. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Pelagian.
I'll second it, Snyder.
Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the floor? Ms. Secretary, can you please poll the board?
Commissioner Pelagian?
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Commissioner Fox?
Yes.
Commissioner Scarfaro is a yes, and President Sloniker.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Other motion. Motion to approve the appointment of Monica Chibber to the Whitehall Township Environmental Advisory Council, term expiring 12/31/27. Do I hear a motion?
I motion Fox. Wait, what? Sorry.
Do
Yes.
I hear a motion?
Yes, Fox
Okay.
motions.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Pelagian.
Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the floor?
Karen Pashefko, 3303 Musselman Court. EAC supports Monica's reappointment. That's all I need to say.
Thank you for that comment. Any other comments from the floor? Ms. Secretary, can you please poll the board?
Commissioner Fox?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelagian?
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Scarfaro does not, nay. President Sloniker?
Based upon the input from a representative from the Environmental Council, aye.
Motion passes 5-0, 5-1, sorry.
Discussion items. Proposed amendment to zoning ordinance El Rackus. Is he here?
I have invited the chairman of the planning commission to come up here with me because this particular proposal was a product of the planning commission, and actually Jonathan had started the whole discussion. As you're aware, we have several properties in the township that are being looked at for development with respect to warehouses or distribution facilities. We've also had At least 3 appeals go before the zoning hearing board, with some of the, largely with what they've gone before the zoning hearing board was the discrepancy between warehouses and distribution. Whitehall was fortunate that years ago we had envisioned that there were 2 separate types of uses. That's not always the case regionally. But even though we have that distinction, there are still areas of the ordinance that we did not have provisions that. No, we don't need a button. I don't need no stinking button. It's always on. There were areas of the ordinance which did not sufficiently address these types of uses. Typically, when you call out a use as a conditional use in your zoning ordinance, you have provisions pertaining to that particular use, which you do have in the zoning ordinance. You have, like, for daycare centers, you have for BYOB establishments, for senior housing. You have standards for those types of conditional uses, and that's really what's encouraged with the municipality's planning code, that when you call out something as a conditional use, you identify the conditions under which you would approve that type of use. Our ordinance did not have any of those conditions for either of those types of uses, so what we have, what the Planning Commission had done at Jonathan's urging was examine the ordinance and see if we could close that gap and put provisions in with respect to particularly distribution facilities, which is what the hot button issue is. We're not really proposing to change too much with respect to the warehouses, because we know what we have for warehouses. It's not what everybody thinks it is, it's what we have identified it to be. Having said all of that, the Planning Commission has worked hard over the past several months and come up with what they feel are proposed regulations that they would like the board to consider as an amendment to the zoning ordinance. And I had forwarded that to the board previously. So I will turn it over to Jonathan if he has anything to add with that.
Essentially, I mean, we know within the Lehigh Valley, overall, the amount of warehousing that's going up all over the place. It's rampant. The biggest thing that we want to really look at is, obviously, what makes sense for the community, if one has to go here and can go here. And the other piece is what happens to that building after the bubble of warehousing pops. Because there is at least 6 million square feet of open space in the Lehigh Valley that is not getting full. And that's just in the Lehigh Valley. It is growing. The warehousing is over. And I know that, and I can speak to that because that is actually my line of business. And I deal with it every day. So putting this together, I'm very proud of, you know, the Planning Commission as a whole. They took their due diligence, they researched, they looked at everything, we came together. And again, this is to look at the now and then the future of what those buildings will turn into if we don't have anybody go into them. So, thank you.
Yes, that's the draft. Yeah, and basically what the Planning Commission is asking that the board give consideration to actually turning it into a bill to put through the process.
Correct.
Yeah, I'll go. So the questions I have on it.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that you have to do it, but there were some things that didn't make sense to me. Like, for example, on page 2, the definition of temporary storage really doesn't have a definition that I know what temporary is, other than it comes in, it gets redone over, stuffed, and out it goes again. That's temporary, but is temporary storage where it only sits in the warehouse for a week? Or is that not temporary storage? These are just, I looked at this of how I could get around your system.
No, absolutely, it makes sense.
That's what I did.
I got what you're going for.
So that was number 1. Minimum distance, I understood that. Use of involve of 50 tractor trailer trips per day. So let's just suppose that we're looking at a very large warehouse.
Where are you at, Ken?
Yeah.
Page 2, C as in cat.
Oh.
Oh, from my memo, okay, yeah, because the
Gotcha.
memo was the first page.
Am I
sorry.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, so the warehouse that I pass all the time on Church Street, it's approximately 500,000 square feet. Yes, 500,000 square feet. I don't know how many doors are there, but let's suppose that,
Okay, can I interrupt you for 1
Sure.
second, Ken? That is not a warehouse, according to Whitehall Township zoning ordinance.
okay,
It's a distribution facility.
So
And
then-
that's very important when we're reviewing this, to remember that Whitehall Township regulates warehouses and distribution facilities entirely differently. Most municipalities, that's an interchangeable term, not in Whitehall.
so that's one of my questions at the end, because it's really fine line, and you have to educate me more on what the fine line is. But what I was looking at is, no matter what this is called, if you have 50 trips, 50 tractor trailer trips per day, and I have 75 doors, that means none of my doors are gonna be used. Mathematically, it doesn't work. So if I build an 800,000 square foot warehouse and I have 75 doors, that means I can only go there 50 times a day, so that automatically defeats the purpose.
No, and I would look at it, there's some that are gonna be there overnight or for 2 days till they do some with, that's how I look at it.
I don't know enough about it, but we just approved somebody to do a 200,000 square foot warehouse, and it was 40 trips a day, I think it was. And we're looking at something larger, and it didn't correspond in my mind. That's all I'm saying. Does that make sense? We just approved a warehouse. Oops. Yeah, I mean, it's distribution
Yeah,
center, but
I'm
the,
confused.
yeah, so am I.
Can you just say what you're saying? Because all this is saying that you have to do additional traffic studies
Right.
if you have more than that trips.
Yeah, we're putting the limit of that 50, and then you've got to,
That's okay.
yeah, so,
I have here number of doors equals number of trips, question mark. That's, so I'm just asking.
No, not necessarily.
no.
Okay. Proposed hours of operation, you want to know what they are going to be. That was in K. There was no problem with that one either. Types of materials that's proposed and be stored, frequency of distribution and restocking, and the duration of the period of the storage materials. These are the kinds of questions that you want them to answer when we come through. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Method of disposal of surplus, and that makes sense to me. F, vehicle access to be arranged as to minimize congestion along the arrangement. You address the stocking of the property? There's no storage on the property at all, correct? Everything's internal.
Yeah, we're going all over the place trying to find out which
F as
section
in
you're
Frank.
talking. Here,
Yeah.
yeah. The documentation of the disposal of materials.
Do I have a different document than you have?
I don't know,
It's just that
there's
we're-
multiple letters of the
We're
same
jumping all
letter,
over
so.
here, yeah.
What am I doing wrong?
No,
I'm on, mine says page 3.
yeah,
Okay.
this would be ours, no.
Okay, so we're good here.
Yeah,
So, okay, I go page 2, then I go page 3, then I have a little a, b, c, and I have a
Right.
capital F. Are we on the same page?
yes.
Yes.
Okay. You shall provide necessary accommodations for transit riders to the facilities, so you want
What letter are
Atlanta?
you on now?
H as in Harry.
Page 3. Yes, page 3,
H. Developer shall contact the Northampton Transportation regarding the possible transit service to the facility and shall provide the necessary accommodations for transient riders to the facility.
Flip a page.
Yeah, I have a different.
We have a different layout. That'd be great.
No, I'm gonna do this, I have it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay,
All right, so what about H? Yes.
So H, you feel that we should require the developer to provide, basically Lanta to come to the facility?
Amazon does it already. They do it at all their sites. We do it at all their sites. It's actually known.
Okay.
That way they can, when it cuts down on the traffic for employees and those that don't have cars can actually get to work.
All right, I'm fine. LED, I'm on page 4, J, little e and little h in that area.
Okay.
You defined the Kelvin scale for the lights at 3,000. Is that something you pulled from another ordinance someplace?
Yes.
Okay. And the same thing with the trailers and the lights and when they turn on and turn off, all that stuff is from another ordinance?
Yes.
All right. I'm on page 5, all right? How do you control idling and things to that effect?
So, yes, there is a state law about idling longer than 5 minutes or so. However, it is really up to the property owner to manage that. You can't,
It's okay.
yeah. But we want to make sure that it's there and in there so that they know that it's being looked at.
Okay, and then you're not requiring, but under, you see, Roman numeral little b 1, you're encouraging the use of electrical hookups, and I thought I saw someone here said that you must provide necessary electrical charging stations.
Correct.
Yes, okay,
So, and just for edification of why that's in there, one, electrical trucks and in the futures being looked at, and this is one of those future ones as well. So if this building sits dormant, you now have the infrastructure in there for electrical vehicles that somebody could come in and it be potentially turn into like a rec center, and they don't have to add additional costs in there to set up EV charging. So have them install it right out the gate.
I don't agree with that one, but that's all right. Just, that one's, I mean, we're trying to predict the future, and you're making
Right.
somebody put something in there, you have no idea what's gonna happen in the future. And we all know what's going on in the electrical stuff right now. I think it's a developer choice as to whether they do it or not, but everything else in this thing sounds fine.
That's why we had it as encourage,
Right,
require. Because it did start out at require.
yeah.
It's not encouraged, it says trucking charging stations, the applicant shall construct sufficient electric truck charging stations for the facility. D says you have to.
And again, I know we can't predict the future, but based upon what we see and what we know within the industry, within the trucks, as well as, again, empty buildings standing around, you want somebody to go in there and utilize it for something that's beneficial for the community.
Okay.
So how do you set up that infrastructure to make it more appealing for them to come in?
And
And that's what the purpose of that one was, ultimately.
I'm just asking for explanations.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not-
and I will give them for you.
The berm shall be covered, I'm on page 6, Roman numeral 5 and 6. One of the things that I've noticed is that other warehouses and distributions and large buildings are well landscaped compared to what we have in our area. And the question is this landscaping adequate? Because I noticed that you say from the top of a berm, blah, 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 and how you work your way through that process. But, I mean, is it, I mean, I can think of the ones over on Airport Road and 329. They're well landscaped, well appointed compared to what we see at our location. And the berms and stuff were there. And I just want to make sure that that is something that would be spiffed up a little bit on that.
No, absolutely, and that was the whole point, is to make it look nice if it's going there. Because I look at the FedEx facility out by the airport, and that's really nicely done.
Yes, that's all, that's what I'm saying. Because once you build a large building, you got to do something with it.
Right.
I mean, you just can't leave it there.
And this isn't anticipated necessarily to be the final product. This is to get you to agree to put it forward.
Yeah,
And
I'm
then,
fine.
based on the comments, it has to be revised.
Right.
It'll have to be revised.
O, when you get down to O on page 6, external building materials shall be of colors that are low, reflective, subtle, or earth tone. When I see things like earth tone, I just feel you're getting into areas telling me what color do I want to build my house routine. I didn't,
So-
that's where I'm coming from.
That is actually, that is done. We are required a lot of times of a specific paint color, bless you,
Bless you.
of a specific paint color we have to have our warehouses.
Okay?
And this is, and again, remember, these things in here are giving you, because it is a conditional use, you as the board, to have the latitude of seeing how you want things like this built.
Okay. Mechanical scraper made total sense to me. 7, I see, it was kind of neat to read how you classify a woodland. I enjoyed reading that. 50 individual trees classify a woodland, which I thought was kind of funny in a way. And then extra parking spaces with electrical outlets and signage being there. When I read it, I thought it was a very good, well-drafted arrangement. The only area that I questioned is at times I thought you went into the private property rights, telling people what they need and must do, where it would be an option. And those are the areas that I only questioned on myself personally. That's all.
No, fair enough.
Good start, and it was well-written, is where I'm at.
So, and just to also give some context around this as well, me personally, in my line of work, I have implemented over 250 warehouses since 2017.
Okay.
There's only a couple things on here that I haven't been put through the ringer on, from other townships across US, Canada, and Mexico.
Well, you have far more experience than I do.
It's kind of my jam.
So I'm glad to see that the planning commission is thriving with my departure.
It was only under your tutelage that we could
Doubt
hear.
that. The only question, I went through this and actually sent an email to Lee, but the one question I just wanted to clarify is page 4I, where it says off-street loading will not be permitted. Did you mean on-street loading?
Yes, it should be
Yeah.
on the street.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Because it didn't make any sense. And then the only other thing that I looked at was the woodland preservation. I didn't know how you arrived at those numbers.
Those were looking at a lot of different places that have done it. So it was just kind of a culmination of what made sense. And again, it's up for discussion and debate if we think something's better for it.
Yeah, this is just a work product,
Yeah.
so we realize that there will be recommendations, changes along the way.
Yeah, I would, if I had something to say, I would like to see a per tree replacement placed in there too. Where it's 2 for 1. That we end up, that, and then also the section on the berms, I really think that needs to be beefed up at with higher elevations and wider bases on them. I know when I do work in other municipalities over the years, the berms that are normally required are much larger than what we require in a township. And I think that's something we can definitely improve on if we're gonna be doing this. And the one thing I'm very pleased to hear, and I kind of knew you were gonna do this though, is the future look at for vacant buildings. Because that's something that I've tried to encourage before I got up here, but to look at, because we've seen, and Lee can attest to this, we worked hard on the adaptive reuse. And we really had something in place beforehand, and unfortunately it kind of fell apart. But I'm very concerned about some various projects that are great for the time, but then they can easily become unused and unusable. And from a zoning perspective, and I see that there's another zoning hearing board member sitting in the audience, so we're blessed with 2 tonight, but it's the bar becomes fairly low for this functionally obsolete legal case in zoning hearings, and then we're saddled with all kinds of either expansion of commercial use or expansion of residential use in commercial districts, that some people may be encouraging, but I don't think we want that in this township. That's the impression that I'm getting from everybody, that we want to keep our retail area, our commercial area thriving. And so I think those are things that we really need to look at from the planning perspective. And I'm glad you did that, and that's something that will give some teeth to this if this moves forward, which I hope it does. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
2 or 3 quick comments.
Sure.
The Lanta access, I think your intent is that if we deem it's necessary, they install it on their facilities. I mean, whether it be a shelter, that we don't place the burden on the public to put a shelter in that serves that community.
Correct. It's on the business
Yep,
to
yep.
work with Lanta, figure out how that's going to work, set up everything that needs to happen.
Generally speaking, we have some commercial facilities that are wanting to get rid of Lanta. To me, it should be written into the plan that the public has access. Pedestrian access, I think that's just a common, every warehouse, pedestrian access should be in play, whether it's along the perimeter or to get to those mass transits. Quick general comment, maybe, I think at some point we need to start looking at recreation fees to some of these commercial developments. This is probably not the location, but I would be looking to someone, if you've encountered that, where there's something drafted that seems to hold up to the legal muster, I think we would love to have that input to draft our own.
Okay.
That's all I have.
If I may add one thing, and I just looked, and here I had my redlined markups on this, and that was page 2, C, which is the number of trips, that there's no definition of a trip, and one of the suggestions that I wrote, and Lee got this, is that a trip shall be defined as either one arrival or one departure from the facility, because it's not defined in here.
Makes sense.
And I think that should be clarified in this, because it almost sounds, when you read it, it almost sounds like one trip is both as an in and out.
Right.
I don't think we want that.
No, fair enough.
So it would be or.
Yeah, that was the other thing. And then, page 4B, non-horizontal surfaces. After the fifth sentence down, project their output into the windows of neighboring residents or structures and uses.
So that would be a little different, Rob, than what the lighting and glare limitations are right now. They don't go commercial property to commercial property. It's only commercial to residential.
Right, yeah, well, I'm thinking of adjoining structures though, too.
You're right.
That was what I wrote down. That's,
And
that's-
paths is wrong. It
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
paths.
paths, it's paths, I
Yes.
figured that, yeah. I just had a couple other things, but definitely the berms, that's all, sorry about that, thank you.
You know, one last item, the trips in and out of the facility. I've been at distribution facilities where they have 100-plus vehicles go out within a 40-minute time span, and then they come back at the end of the day. That's a lot different than if those same trucks are filtering throughout the day. So I don't profess to know the best way to handle that, but that we're not faced where something that works for trips throughout the day, and now something's put in there where now we're conflicting with bus traffic and school traffic.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and that's part of also understanding what kind of the intended use for it really is. Because we can determine if that's, how it's gonna happen and what's gonna happen at that point. Because I mean, not for nothing, you could have a 200,000 square foot facility with 10 dock doors, and we could be running trailers. That was creepy. We could be running trailers every half hour, 24/7. We've done it. It angered a lot of townships when it happened. This is back in the day, so we've learned the errors of the ways in the industry, but there's still those that will try and take advantage of the numbers if possible. That makes sense.
So I don't know, like, if there's a formal action, like, what would be the next thing for the board to recommend it to go through the path? Does there have to be a formal action, or?
So there are two alternatives I see. One, you could just direct me to work with Lee and put together an ordinance that could get put on for review, discussion, first reading, or you could send it to L&L if you wanted to. This is not an ordinance yet. But it's much further along than we would normally have. So, I mean, obviously, it's your decision. I think I'm comfortable at this point that it's fairly close to where it could be just put into an ordinance rather than having it go to committee, but that's for all of you to decide.
Personally, I would not want to prolong getting this in place by going through L and then find out board has additional comments. I think we all have collective minds. If we have to table it for another month or two, everybody's getting input at the same time and understanding where it's going. And ideally, I would love to see this be a moratorium put on. I don't know if we can do that, moratorium on additional considerations for future projects that aren't on the table to get this in place.
You can't do that. You have a current ordinance, this is changes to the ordinance. If you attempted to put a moratorium on, we'd have much bigger problems.
With that being said, though, Attorney Gross, since this is going to be a two-hearing ordinance, correct?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes, it's an amendment to the zoning ordinance. It would be one hearing, then it has to go to the township and Lehigh Valley Planning Commissions for comment, comes back for a second hearing for a vote.
So if I understand the MPC correctly, once the first hearing is done, it's considered a pending ordinance, and then it's in place as a pending ordinance, and they would have to follow it as a pending ordinance, correct? So where I'm going to my fellow commissioners is that, and I know Commissioner Warren indicated that, a month or two delay or, while we work, I would encourage us as a body to work through any of the small minutia that we need to before it comes up in front of us at the first hearing so that we don't have to table it. That's my recommendation, because well, we're going to have an executive session. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but we know that there are other things coming along. There's no doubt about that. And I think the more teeth that we put in to our ordinance, which we're lucky, we've said this before, we're lucky that we have the two definitions between distribution facility and warehouse. So my encouragement to everybody is that we work out the minutia before it comes up in front of us for a first hearing.
I'm fine with doing it that way.
But I would say, I think we're all in agreement that this should go.
Yeah, I think we should move forward expeditiously.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay here for the next one.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I guess we'll go on to the next item here, road closing procedure ordinance, Lee Rackus.
And this was a discussion item at the workshop, and there were some questions, so I did send the board an email, and hopefully that cleared up all of the questions. Basically, what we're trying to do is update the road closing procedures, and that's a little handout that we give to people that want to close a road. And we wanted to update it to bring it current with respect to contacts for the agencies and just clarify, how the process works. And so the new one was attached. And what Attorney Gross had suggested was rather than when the emails change or our garbage hauler changes, that, to update that document, that we don't have to bring it before the board every time. We're not proposing to change anything in the ordinance other than the procedures that are attached as an exhibit, so.
It's just an administrative change, that's all. It's
Correct.
It's not a substance, it's administrative.
Yes, so, again, we would ask if that would be okay, if we could place it on the board's agenda for consideration. I believe this is just a one-hearing ordinance to amend that.
Only comment that I have is, and I can't say I know the details of this very deeply, but opening the road, that we have teeth, that they fill in a road cut that's a rumble strip, that
Yeah.
road's not getting open until they do that right.
And what's fun about that, Jeff, is that that's a whole different chapter of your codified ordinances. This is motor vehicles and traffic, and that's how it's regulated, you know, basically with motor vehicles and traffic and how traffic runs on the road.
Fair enough.
The street openings and stuff like that, that's chapter 20, I think, of your codified ordinances. But yeah, we do regulate that.
Okay, thank you.
21, sorry. 21, chapter 21, sorry. So if it's okay with the board, if I've answered your questions, then what we're going to do is put it on your next month agenda for consideration. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Snyder, separate meeting / workshop to discuss township issues and park and recreation report.
So, it's 9:30 at night, we really didn't get into some things that are going on. So, based on emails that came through, we already know that somebody filed a tax appeal, we owe them 60-some thousand bucks. We already know that the park recreation comprehensive plan should be coming towards us. That has to be discussed, and that's not something at a meeting like at 9:30 night to discuss. There's issues in the tax office that needs to be discussed, one way or the other. There's general comments or things that we need to talk about of where we're going, like on the rec arrangement. Shot Avenue's closed, we took it over. Fullerton's basically closed, we took it over. What the heck are we gonna do? Something has to be put aside, that we bring in the recreation group and say, hey, guys, what are we doing here? And it has to be put on the agenda to discuss some of these items. Other things that have to be discussed, and I'm really biting my lip because it's the second month in a row our treasurer has left before the meeting was over. And I got a report here that says Berkshire payments, $78,000. Don't have Berkheimer, no idea what that's about. Another one, Berkheimer again, $31,000, have no idea what that's about, okay? Trash collection back arrangement, I'm really concerned, it's $615. There's $275,000 we haven't collected yet. Jack and I have gone into detail with this arrangement and looked at it. There are some people who haven't paid a garbage tax in this township for almost 10 years. Pardon me? Fee, okay, fee. Now, there's $200-some thousand there. Now, like, what are we doing? It was the responsibility of the treasurer to collect that, okay? Now, we're going from 300 to 600, and if these people didn't do it for 10 years, they're not gonna do it on the 11th year. And instead of being 270,000, it goes to 500,000, and we need to talk about it. We can't just sit down and ignore it, and you can't sit down and say Berkheimer does it. I believe that when you go through the list that was provided to us, there's maybe 20 people in here that may owe us close to $50,000, $60,000. We need to look at the fact that we have a paralegal on staff, or Jack's paralegal, to sit down and say, you know what? Pick the top 10 people and slam down on them. I looked up a couple of the addresses. No mortgage on the property. No mortgage on the property, and they owe us $15,000. If you file a lien against that and you foreclose on it, they're gonna pay it. And that's what you gotta do to study, to look through these, to figure them out. Again, nobody's there to answer my questions, but if we had this other, and you're gonna hear me say it more than once, we'd be sitting down with the finance director and saying, here's $275,000, we all paid our taxes, and these people aren't, and they're repeat offenders. These aren't folks where I have a bad situation in my family and I can't do it. One of these is a 4-unit apartment complex, collecting rent and not paying us our taxes. That's ridiculous. Fees, okay, it's a fee. Whether it's a fee or tax, it doesn't make a difference. It's $270K. That's what makes my mind sit here and figure it out. If you're gonna sit down and say, do it, don't do it, you know what? I'll just stop paying mine. Why should I pay it? Because that's the attitude that'll go through everybody else who's struggling to make the payments and can't. We have to have conversations in a separate meeting where we sit in here, it's a workshop, and I know you're gonna have public input and all that stuff, but we need to talk about this. You just can't let it sit here. The other thing that's going on, I'll just leave that go for now. But what are we doing with $275K? Now, if you sit down and say it's Berkheimer, my understanding is they're going forward, they're not going back so much. Jack spent a lot of time doing it previously, and they sit, so if you sell your property, the lien gets paid, okay? And I'm saying that if we let this go at this particular point, when the $600 bills come out, this number is gonna be doubling, you're gonna say, and now what are we gonna do? And that has to be addressed, in my opinion. We just took a pile of stuff away from the Treasurer's Department and come over and say, you need to go back and figure this out with Jack, the paralegal, or hire a paralegal to figure out what's going on, because the right to knows and this all their good stuff, I think it's something we need to talk about. And if it ends up being that it's more economical to continue to use Jack's office for that, fine. If it's more economical to have a paralegal on staff that can do this, fine. But not to talk about it is crazy. That's a good example. We need to sit down and do that. And there's other things in here, but, you know, Portoff, there's a report that came from Portoff in here of what they collected. Here it says that the average amount outstanding right now is close to $270K. What's the percentages and what the fees are getting? And that's just a lot of money just to sit here and not make arrangements with it. And I know, hell, she's not here to defend herself, no one told her to leave, but these are questions that should be asked and sit down and say, you're charged with doing that. Now, I want to know how you're going to do that. He can't walk over to the office and tell her to do it. She has to do it on her own. It's in the charter, she's supposed to be doing it. So how do we get that taken care of? It's $270K. That's a responsibility. Now, if you owed me $270K, I guarantee you I'd be on top of you like you know what to get it. And we're no different. And at 600, I would bet you that number is going to hit 500K by the end of next year. That represents $250,000 in this township. So what are we going to do? Are we going to have a special meeting to discuss these items? Make the treasurer be present to figure it out, or if not, however you want to figure it out. But we can't just sit here and say, oh, don't worry about it, because it's a lot of money. So how are we going to handle this, Commissioner?
Okay, Ken, you're identifying issues.
Yep.
What is it then that you're proposing when these meetings would be? I mean,
No, I
it's
know.
one thing about saying, hey, these are problems. Another thing saying, well, how can we, as a group, because there's gonna be some people that will not be able to make just because of how they do their lives. So I'm just asking, what is it that you have as suggestions for these special meetings?
And that's very valid. I think that during the month of March or April, when the recreation thing comes out, that we have a meeting and we're going to put 2 or 3 things on the agenda. It's going to take time and figure out. You're going to see that another thing that I've requested from Brendan Hibbler was to get an estimate to find out what the costs are really going to be for the site improvements on a recreation center and what that is. There's a meeting that I have scheduled with him for next week to review a proposal that came in. We need to talk about that. Do we want to spend the money to get what's up so we know what the real cost is as compared to the cost that was given to the mayor? So these items, you need to keep moving them along. So what I'm asking for is to sit down and say, we're going to have a special meeting, March. I don't care what we do. I don't care if we sit down and say, let's come in here 2 hours before and do it that way. There's other townships that meet at 4 o'clock or whatever works for the most of us, and say, these are the 3 things that we need to talk about. And prioritize them and say, okay, now how do we get these from over our slot to the administration to move them along? Because when that report comes out and you sit down and see what's being recommended, there are some real heavy decisions that got to be made in the future going along, and you need to get the information up front. So I'm going to ask you to spend X number of dollars to get that information. I talked about this last year, so that we keep this thing moving. If we're going to do a recreation center, consolidate, or whatever has to happen. And I don't think it's fair for us, to be honest with you, to sit here at 10, 11 o'clock having those kinds of discussions. It should be allocated to those 3, 4 topics, and pick a date that we all can agree on, and agree what those topics would be, and who we need from the township to come in here and help us. Like, I know you're a liaison for the rec arranger. I know that Mr. Abbott has been well involved in a lot of recreation in the township. Okay, so I'll have the committees mixed up, but the bottom line is that this is what we do to figure this out, and that's what I'm asking for. Now, I know it's an extra meeting, guys, and I know we're not gonna get a bonus in our check next month for it, but I'm just saying, we need to do this.
I would say the items on the treasurer's list, that be presented now, that we're not starting cold with the conversation, that hopefully we're getting some answers or feedback going into that meeting with your concerns on that.
I don't know how to answer that question, because I could tell you that Well, he does. Go ahead.
The treasurer, once the year is done, the treasurer's responsibility for collection of delinquent garbage is gone.
Where does it say that?
We've contracted with Portnoy to do delinquent garbage collection and real estate collection. That's been like that since 2017. Since Portnoy's been collecting delinquent garbage, that's 17. 8 years, $2 million of garbage, of delinquent garbage has gone to them for collection. They've collected almost 1.7 million of that delinquency. So they've done a pretty good job up to this point of doing that. So the 275,000, it's a big number, real big number. Portnoy whittles that down within the first 6 months of sending out notifications to the people. That's why you see in your, as a line item in your revenues in the budget, about 275,000 for delinquent garbage, because those are the dollars that Portnoy is collecting. So presently, you have approximately $330,000, not including this past year, of delinquent garbage. In addition to that, as you'd referenced before, the township used to do, in the 2010s, we leaned properties ourselves, spent a lot of money doing it. There was about 240,000 of that before 2017. That is still not collected. It's been liened, secured. It was probably at one time double that. But as you go through the years, properties change hands. People refinance, and then they have to settle up. So those are the two, neither of which falls on the tax collector to secure. Taking this one step further, since about 2020, end of 2023, we've been filing writs of execution against some of these long delinquent properties. In 2025 now, some of these delinquencies are coming up for sheriff's sale. So Portnoy is taking those next steps to try and get the money from these people by, using the court, taking them to court and selling their house method.
So I do have a question though. I've looked at this list, and it puzzled me. That there's filing dates as far back as 2011, and then there's an expiration date listed, which I'm assuming the expiration date means your lien disappears.
No, it doesn't.
No.
It just means we have to go
Back and refile.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but, I mean, I know some of the people on this list, even though the names are,
Well,
because I know their addresses. One of them's a former client of mine, which is uncomfortable, but nonetheless, it's there. These people are gonna be here at least another 30 years in these homes. Well, I mean, when does that get resolved? If you're relying on transfer of property or refinance to be able to get it settled, you might never see this money, or 30 years out, or if they don't have an estate, then what? I mean, this is a bad situation, this really is, and all fees, taxes, however you want to call it, is based on the honor system, but some of these numbers are very concerning, very concerning.
So you and I had a lengthy conversation in your office, and I agreed with a lot of things that you said. But let's just use an example. Person A hasn't paid for 10 years. I have no doubt that person's gonna walk in, as we say, got a religion and paid their bill. That ain't gonna happen, all right? So if it went over to the other company, Portnoy, that's fine. Then I want to go to Portnoy and say, of the 225 people on the list, tell me exactly what you're doing with each one of these. Now, that property right there is 123 Main Street. Did you do a title search, or did you pull up tax records to see if there's a mortgage against that property? No, we did not. Why not? Well, okay, I will. No mortgage on the property. That's a hit item. Let's look at it and attack it. Next one I looked at, value of the property, $300,000. Mortgage on the property was close to 85% the loan ratio value. Not worth it for me because I got to pay off the first mortgage. And that's how you go after the 200 and some people, one item at a time, and work your way through. And that's how you get your money. And that's what we need to do. Now, if it's not the treasurer's office, that's fine. If Portnoy says, well, we're not going to do it, okay, that's fine. You still owe me the money. So somebody around here is going to do it. You just can't leave 200 and some thousand lay for 10 years, 15 years. And those numbers don't include interest. Am I right? They don't. So this number could be closer to 400 grand. That's not true. It may be every bit of 350 to 400 that we're owed because of interest and filing fees. So the end result is this is no longer, in my opinion, status quo on the oldies, because these oldies are only going to continue to grow because their habit is 10 years, nothing, 10 years, nothing, $650, they ain't going to pay it anyway. And that's what we got to do. That would be on my item to sit down and figure it out.
And I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that the fees that we accumulate with these also get thrown in there.
It does.
Okay, well, and again, but.
I can't
Because
spend them.
I understand that. However, I just want people to understand, it's not like all this money's gone. I mean.
It is gone. It's not you.
Well,
It's not in my
here.
hands now.
It's not gone. It's not here. There are differences. And I'm just, not that I'm disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that you gotta look at, like you said, you gotta pick and choose the way you wanna do it. And again, when they're given this is how we're gonna collect, they're supposed to try to collect everybody the same way.
But with all due respect, it's $250,000 that somebody owes me, and when you hit 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, I don't have my money. I want my money. It may sound cruel, but I want my money. And if I have somebody sitting there that's a 4-unit apartment collecting rent, making a profit, you pay me my garbage tax. And you know what? I believe that if I took the top 10 offenders here and I did what I could legally do to get my money, the other 25 will stand in line and say, oh my gosh, guess what? And then they'll sit down and pay you, or come in and say, you know what? Can I have a payment plan? Can I have an amnesty plan? Can I do something as compared to just sit here and watch this thing grow? And that's all I'm asking to discuss, and do something to move forward and not let this thing grow, because it's going to grow next year. Oh, it's going to grow. That's what I'm saying. So that would be one of the items.
All right, well, no, okay. And we just seen you take approximately 25 minutes discussing just this one part. What I'm asking you, the logistics, when is it that you're, and I understand, well, we could meet at 4 o'clock. Some people on here can, other people, it's impossible. It's hard for them to get here at 7. I'm just saying, it's not something I think that you can come up and say, well, you know what, in March, we should start doing this. I don't know. And this is something that, again, that's why it's a discussion item.
Okay.
To go ahead and maybe you can formulate when you think the best time to go ahead and start this program.
Okay. On the whiners, I'm known as the guy that does all the talking. That's what I've been criticized for the last 3 weeks. So how about we do it this way? Why don't you guys come up with an idea of how you collect $270K? And when you're going to have the meetings, because if you told...
No, because you're going now with a specific thing. You have more than just,
Oh, I
let's
do.
collect garbage. That's what I'm trying to address.
So what I would
We're
do-
going to have these meetings, we're not going to, unless you're saying we're going to have these meetings, it's going to be one topic only.
I don't know. Tom, here's what I know. No meetings, nothing happens, okay? Doing it at 10 o'clock at night is crazy, okay? What I would do is sit down and say, you know what we're going to do? These are the 5 topics we have. We're going to start at 6 o'clock in such and such a day, this extra meeting. We will quit at 9:30, cut and dry. Wherever we are, clock's turned off 9:30, we all go home. Whatever we agree on, that's the time it does. And then we agree that if it's important enough, we schedule for the following month or early workshop session to move stuff forward. That's all I'm trying to do is figure out how we move this forward. The two hot topics for me right now is this on the treasurer's report, and the other one's gonna be the recreation. That is not a 15-minute conversation by any stretch. That could be a discussion one night all by itself by the time you get all the parties involved. And that's what I'm asking to do that. I didn't want to sit down and say, let's talk about it in June because the year's half over. So I think it's necessary.
So in that vein, Ken, not to take you do all the talking away from you, but we can't do anything on the rec until we see the comprehensive plan update.
I know.
And you know, sitting in the rec commission meetings because they asked me to, I hear what's going on and I hear where it's at with Herbert, Rowland, and Grubik. But at this point, it's no need to talk about it because we don't know what's in it yet. We don't, you know, there's rumors and there's comments but we don't have any hard evidence, so it's, in my opinion, that's not on the table yet. It's coming. It's in the butler's pantry, but it's not out on the table yet. As far as this goes, I'm in favor of meeting earlier before a workshop and have a fixed time, as you say. If it's meeting at 5:30 to 7, we're gonna have a half an hour, or, you know, we'll have an hour and 15 minutes. That gives you 15 minutes to use the restroom or whatever, but we'll break it 6:45. We start at 5:30, we break at 6:45, and we discuss this. And if it needs to go to the next month, then we go to the next month. That's my opinion.
Do we need a quorum for that discussion?
I think so.
All right.
Absolutely.
If it's a committee that meets before our workshop,
I think,
It's not a committee.
okay, you went the whole board.
I think,
If it's a workshop, you don't need a quorum. No action can be taken at a workshop. It has to be open to the public, but it's a workshop. It's a time for you to discuss.
The time has to be advertised, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
The commissioner will have to be, Larissa will have to know so she can advertise the time.
it'll be a special workshop as opposed to the regular.
No, it'll just be an
Their
extended workshop.
workshops are not, I mean, there's no, unlike meetings, there's no regular special. You can have as many workshops as you
The reason you do this now in February, if you think about it, the earliest you're gonna get it done is April, and if you're lucky, maybe March, so we can do it because this is already a February meeting. So, you know, we're done, and then I know that the HG, whatever issue that's coming out, because we have a meeting coming up on that, you'll be seeing that, and I know they're gonna send this information separately, so it's there if you can start to read some of the stuff. And I think it's imperative to figure out what we're doing.
Do we have time to advertise for next month? We have to advertise the time of the workshop?
Well, I thought, yes, you have to advertise the time and place if you're gonna have a workshop. So there should be plenty of time for next month, whether it's an extended regular workshop or an additional workshop before the board meeting, either one can be advertised.
I mean, so if you did 5:30, we do our business for the first hour.
This time of year, so you can make it later on.
Oh, I know, because it's tax. I got it. So if we did it for that, it would be a start, you go from 5:30 to 6:45, and then at that point, the agenda next month may be totally empty, and it gives you more opportunities. If it's totally stacked, then we gotta deal with those issues.
I don't think the agenda will be totally.
I don't think so either.
Okay, just.
Yeah. That's all I'm
Can't
asking.
give that full meeting.
Are we having an executive session for this? And then the other issue is, how do you address the person who's not here? How do you do that?
At this point, Deputy Mayor Myers at least pulled that out of the delinquent prior to 1 year, because that's not in her purview, so.
Well, she sent a memo out requesting how we're gonna handle some things on the garbage tax, which is being done. She wanted answers on that with the churches and if they were being billed or not. She gave reports that aren't valid, so my question is, how do we deal with it? We have 7 churches or 8 churches that are being charged and the other ones she one of the commissioners discuss it tonight and review it. It's not here. What are we gonna do?
Could we do an email, just kind of like we have questions?
I'm not doing emails like that. The purpose of, I'm being.
He's talking about getting the meeting, not about the
Oh, no, I thought
discussion.
you were talking about the.
No, when the meetings would be.
Oh,
Yeah,
is
am I
that what you're
correct?
talking about?
Okay.
Meetings? Yeah.
And again, that would, you have Randy in on that also, and then people have to check their schedules. I mean, and I'm not saying you don't, I'm just saying that to coordinate something
I
like
agree.
that. So, if it's possible for everybody to go ahead and check their schedule, to see what might be available for them this coming March, Monday, the first workshop meeting, but doing it early. I mean, maybe we can get back and find out about where we're at, and if we can't, then we look for another time. And again, this should accommodate you and the rest of us, so. And everybody okay with that? Okay, so that's what we'll do then. We'll,
I'm great with that.
and we can coordinate that through Larissa. She can go ahead and just make sure that everybody has that. And again, I'm just checking out. Yeah, just send out that, say, hey, this is, we want this by whatever date you need so that we can go ahead and get it in the paper. That's all.
So you're shooting for the
Workshop, for March workshop, yeah.
from 5:30 to?
5:30, and again, we'll, like you said, we have 15 minutes to take a break and whatnot before the regular workshop. And if that doesn't work out for, the majority of people, well, then we'll look at the next one.
Yeah,
And again, because when you first laid this out here, I'm going like, what, are we gonna be meeting on Fridays?
No
Which are no
way.
problems for me. I know it is usually for other people. But for me, Fridays are the same as Sundays, no problem. So, anyway,
So the last discussion item, how are we gonna deal with the issue of the vacant chair? That would be for the mayor, the Jack, the solicitor, and who we're gonna do, because this is the second month in a row where she left early.
I'm sorry. No, I'm trying to figure
someone
out
help us?
people hear that. Yeah. And again, obviously the treasurer does not have to show up if the treasurer does interest, I think, too, so that she could discuss what her, feelings are on some of this stuff. But, I mean, it's our workshop, so,
I'm talking about the questions tonight. The last three meetings, are the four meetings, three of the meetings, that position picked up and walked out in the middle of the meeting. And there's questions that she asked of the commissioners to do. Now, my question is, how do we deal with this? And again, you didn't want to hear what I had to say, but the bottom line is on her side of the table, she picked up and walked out. I could have walked out here a half hour ago for something I was working on, but I didn't get up and leave because it's an obligation. Same principle here. You asked for us to discuss on the agenda, where the hell are you?
okay, and that's fine.
Okay, so how we deal with it?
Right, and what I'm just saying is she'll also have the ability to show up at that she might have some pertinent.
No, I'm talking about tonight's
I
questions.
understand what you're saying, but I mean, I'm dense, but not that dense, I understand.
Okay.
Okay, and again, you're right. If you're gonna go ahead and ask questions of us, you should be here so that we can ask questions of you. It's no problem. The way I see it, and again, like you.
But we can't make her stay, right?
That's my duty. What was
We
that?
can't make her stay.
Oh, no.
We can't.
Oh, no, it's same like you going to the guy right next to you and saying, hey, you gotta stay for this.
Okay.
It's not his meeting, it's the Board of Commissioners meeting.
So we're hampered.
And
Exactly
that's
what
the
we
thing,
are.
and again, how people look at their position is the way it is, that's all. I mean, so.
And she said tonight that we should address the charter, blah, 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 blah. And I was trying to do the same thing so I have control over the office where it's closed, they're not getting us information, we don't know what's going on, but we're not gonna do it, which is perfectly fine. Then I need to know how I'm gonna address this at the meetings, because I'm coming here. Do me a favor, don't send me the reports.
Okay.
Because it makes no sense.
And again, you made this same point a couple of times.
Well, then, I don't make any answer.
Again, I know, and you won't get an answer by talking to the ceiling. Well, I tried that once and you didn't respond.
Okay, Tom, I get it.
But
Just
right
asking
now,
everybody
we're
to-
gonna go forward with what you presented here for your items of discussion. We're gonna children. Oh, yes.
The meeting, is it just the 7 of you, or do you want other staff included in?
To me, anybody that would have pertinent stuff to do with this, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Obviously, the treasurer has some input on this, is what we're trying to do for that part of it. I mean, anything that's pertinent for the people that we're trying to address here with these different questions. We might not know that until the next special meeting.
No, I would expect,
I could tell you, I would want to see Jack here. Right now, what I'm saying is, we're not gonna have just a room full of people that are gonna have input on specific items. I don't see that being fruitful, and having them, showing up and not doing anything.
well, I don't see the purpose of having a workshop session in advance if I don't have access to Jack and our solicitor and our engineer to answer questions.
And again, that's not what she asked. She
I think
asked,
you did, did you not?
I took it differently than that. I took people in the
this invite, and figuring out. Because if you're just gonna address one issue then at a time, then you will know who needs to be invited. Or are you gonna address 3 issues in that hour? Or,
that's what I was
trying to figure out, is who do I send this to?
I would think for the very first meeting, it should be the solicitor and Jack, it should be the 2 Jacks and the engineer for the very first meeting, and then after that point, we go from there. Because they'll set the groundwork that we need to do. And the mayor, of course. Oh, because you're part of this.
And now we're gonna go on to reports.
I couldn't resist that, I'm so sorry.
Now we're gonna go on to reports of public officials, because I think we're at the end of where we're gonna go from there. So, Commissioner Fox.
Thank you for all being here.
Push your button.
Sorry. Thank you for all being here and taking the time, and congratulations to the Eagles. And that's it for today. Oh, I did say that a lot of time I am kind of quiet, and I know I get a lot of that on Whitehall Whiners too, but I do research my items. When I get it, I research it, I read it, I come to workshop, I listen, research it. So when I come to these meetings, I'm prepared with my answers, yes or no. So, just to let everyone know that's, all right. Thank you for everyone being here.
Thank you. Quite clearly, after today's meeting, the only thing I'm really going to report on is, obviously, the wonderful win we all experienced yesterday. Anyway, I just want to talk about Saquon for a second, because I know everybody talks about him in the media and, around town, but I am so super proud of him. So I did write a little quick thing. I'm incredibly proud of Saquon, not just for his on-field accomplishments, but for fulfilling his dream of winning the Super Bowl. I've had the opportunity to watch him since he was a teenager, and not just in a classroom or on the football field. I actually had a personal experience of watching Saquon grow at my house and with my kids, and nowadays with the opportunity to watch him with his kids and with his family. I've watched him grow, not just in terms of his athleticism, but in his maturity, his character, and leadership. Beyond his remarkable physical gifts, it's his dedication to serving others, his humility, and his attitude that truly stand out. Saquon's journey as a player and as a person inspires, I think, all of us to be better and to do better. And I couldn't be more proud of the man that he's become. And I am. There's a lot to be said for an NFL player with this stardom, with this fame. He really is humble, and I give a lot of credit to his parents and how they raised him and his family. And so I'm super proud of him, and I know everybody knows that already, but yeah, I'm just super proud of Saquon. So I think that, he has a lot to be thankful for, and he's truly thankful for that. But I'll stop. But anyway, go Birds. I'm not even an Eagles fan, but go Birds. That's it.
Commissioner Warren?
I'll be brief. Attended the Rec Commission meeting, Parks and Rec Board, I went this month, Randy wasn't there. And the Wetikta meeting was canceled, I think that was prearranged, so there's no update there. And I want to reiterate I think our parks and rec fees to new development are out of date compared to some other municipalities. They haven't kept pace with inflation, so I think we need to look at that and also look expanding it to commercial. And I don't know who does the homework, if it's upon the commissioner to go out there and do the homework, or if we have a rec department trying to call around, but I think we should start that and maybe get it on an L&L agenda when we meet. If we have 2 or 3 items, that could be a 4th item, just that we keep moving that ball along. We've talked about it for too long, so. And I was at the transportation summit there. I think that was very productive. We learned a lot, so that's all.
So I attended the EAC, and the IRT had their kickoff meeting this year. The EAC has got a lot going on. They had somebody come in, there's been issues with the trails and cutting of trails. And there was a gentleman there by the name of Dave Everett. He was the one who said that he had talked to you, Jeff.
Yeah, that's got to be clarified. I never met the gentleman. I think he met with McD and a mutual friend, so maybe that's how he got.
I don't know.
So I'll ask Deb Rosine. Can you set out a clarification? Yeah.
So anyway, supposedly he had gotten permission to do this cutting, and I'm just, Jeff, not pointing a finger at you. I'm just saying what was presented to us, okay? And I can understand that can create problems if they're getting mixed signals.
Agreed.
So there was a long discussion about maps of the trails in the parkway. And I don't know if you even know this, but the county assessment site actually has the trails listed and named on the assessment records. When you go on the GIS, they're there. So yeah. So that was very interesting. Also, at some point, I think I wanted to meet with Brandon and perhaps the mayor about the Chestnut Street barn. Because there was some discussion about that. At the IRT, there was somewhat of a discussion concerning the bag house and the fire station and the roofs. But then I also followed up, and apparently this had been discussed before, and there was no movement from the township on that. So, and one final thing to say is that Casey Coleman, who is Whitehall Township representative of the IRT, he's now the IRT president. So Whitehall's well represented on the IRT. I also attended the Rec Commission meeting because they requested that I attend it. And there was discussion, and I don't think that much of the general public realizes, but there's nobody who has stepped up to run the Schott Avenue Playground. So that has been effectively closed as far as being run privately. It's still open, it's still being used, it's still being maintained, they're still working on it, but, and there was a discussion, particularly after the meeting, the current system that's set up now with the volunteers running these playgrounds, and I think this is gonna come out in the HRG recreation update, is that system is failing. And I think everybody realizes this. If you don't, have your head in the sand. I've seen it for years that I've volunteered in historical societies and countless things over the years. And volunteerism is disappearing. We don't have the people that are interested anymore. They don't feel a sense of duty, or at least in an effort to give back. And I think we're gonna see some real big changes in the way we do things in that regard, especially relying on volunteers. It's just not gonna happen. So I just hope that everybody's aware of this, and we can throw money at things, but it's gonna be a point of no return. It's at a minimum, it's gonna be a point of diminishing returns, because you're just not gonna get those people. So I just hope that people are prepared for this. Thank you.
Commissioner Snyder?
Sewer Authority, I attended those meetings, everything's fine. Zoning is doing a really nice job. Jeff is correct, Wichita was canceled in January, but in December, there was a discussion on a couple items at the meeting I attended. Number one, I requested that they have their meetings in the township building. That was denied, they will not do that. I also questioned the fact that, I didn't question, they also voted on, two things occurred. They renewed their contracts with the same people that sit on the board, and the executive director, I think he's called, got a $100 raise. Consultant got a $100 raise is what he did. I asked for copies of the contract to give them to you because they were supposed to do some things with conflict of interest. They wouldn't give them to me until they were signed. I still don't have them. So when we sit down and go through the 6-month arrangement, just take everything into consideration, what's going on. That's the gist of it. And by the way, Jeff did vote for them to come back to the township here, and there was 2 other new members that did, but I'm going to say the long-term members said no. Is that the correct way to assume it?
I don't know exactly how.
Yeah,
it
but
was-
that's what,
it was a split vote.
they won't come back. That's it.
The reasoning, the reasoning is that they do make copies there, all the financials are there. It's kind of, there's other authorities that meet at their own premises, so it was convenience for them that they wanted to stay there.
That's all.
Okay, first thing I want to address is that we had one of our ex-employees, Tim Bauer, passed away. I know I met him a few times, but I knew his wife better when she was the, I don't know, receptionist kind of thing. She was placed at different parts of the building and whatnot and everything. So I just wanted to go ahead and make sure people recognize that, you know, he was a good guy who did what he was supposed to be doing. And that's what I think that we can ask of our employees. The next thing is that you'll find copies of this in the lobby. This is the workshop from the, not the workshop, the meeting that's going to be held for the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study on the Riverside Drive Raise Grant. And it's at that point in time that you can go ahead and give your opinions and or what. That's on January the 29th. So,
January 29th? It was already.
okay, that's when it was, January 29th. Maybe that's when this was put out. I don't know what, I see January 29th.
That's the date of the letter.
Okay, yes, that's what I'm looking for, the date.
February
February 19th and February 27th. They're gonna have virtual meetings on that, and it's just something that, if you care about Riverside Drive, I mean, we've spent a lot of time here as the board and whatnot, what should be done down there and whatnot, how far it was originally planned to be, how, you know, where it was gonna extend and whatnot. So this hopefully will try to get it all together so that we have a better idea of where things are headed and whatnot, and more for people's input. And the other thing that I guess everybody who has traveled south on MacArthur Road has seen the progress in the demolition of the old dairy site. I mean, it doesn't look like it's going fast, but to me, it's going super fast because years and years and years and years of nothing, and now we see huge piles of ground up concrete and whatnot up there and everything. I don't know when they're gonna be taking that away and whatnot, but again, it's just something that it shows that things are going along. And I know that for some people on the board, they think that government goes too slow. But it was going very slow, but now that they're into it, and this is by private contractors that are handling this right now. So that's where we're at. I wish I could go ahead and congratulate those guys who won yesterday, but that's not in me. And now, since the treasurer has left, I don't know, did we get a treasurer's report that was, is that what she handed out earlier or whatnot? Okay, and again, I'm just saying that normally this is where she would be in, and since she's not here, Mr. Mayor.
I'll make this very brief. I just want to report that the Trailhead Improvement Project is going to kick off potentially next month or early April, and that's exciting stuff. The job's been let. Each not rec center, but each playground facility, Shot Avenue, Cementon, West Caddy, and Hockey have been freshly painted. The lighting at West Caddy was upgraded, ceilings were refreshed, and a new floor installed. Shot Avenue, painted, the floor was sealed in wax to preserve the existing floor. It looks sharp, and we're gonna work on the ceiling and lighting. Unfortunately, we lost our electrical contractor, who we've been working with, and we're trying to resolve that situation moving forward, but we're gonna refresh the lighting at Shot Avenue and then at Fullerton and Cementon. That's all I have with the late hour. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Solicitor, are we supposed to be having an executive session after tonight's meeting?
Executive session on a zoning litigation matter,
Okay, so,
keep it brief, I guess.
okay, we're gonna have it brief, but thank you all for coming. It's been an enjoyable evening for everybody that came. I can see the smiles on your faces.
That many people stayed.
What was that? Yeah, go ahead. Okay, I'm sorry.
Motion to
I want
adjourn.
to sign all these things here.
Second.
Okay, that's as far as you have to go.
It was Robin.